Americans are known to be stranded in the Middle East. A handful of commercial flights have brought people back. Charlene Sadiq's left Dubai and arrived in Manchester.
We were getting a lot of alerts to take shelter, stay away from glass. They'd come at any time during the night. We could hear the sounds over us, and there was one day that there was a big shock and everybody jumped. Every sound was heightened, so terrifying. It just nice to be back.
The economy's predicted to grow just 1.1% this year. The budget watchdogs downgraded its forecast. The Chancellor used her spring statement to insist she has the right economic plan for the country. Treasury Minister and South Wales MP Torsten Bell says it's starting to work.
No one is pretending that households who have seen their budget squeezed by a rising cost of essentials in recent years, who for wages, for example, in Swansea that didn't grow in the last decade, want to see faster progress. And I want to see that as well. That's why we'll be announcing more measures in the coming weeks.
Families whose children attended Bright Horizons Nursery in Camden have met the Education Secretary to push for stronger safeguarding for under-5s. It's after former employee Vincent Chan was jailed for 18 years for 56 sexual offences. One of the parents, whose voice we've changed, told LBC greater protections are needed for whistleblowers.
Those who are responsible for safeguarding our children didn't adequately escalate up within the organisation, and they didn't feel that they could come forward as whistleblowers. We feel that this is the only thing that would have made a material difference in not only preventing Vincent Chan from performing his atrocious crimes, but from spotting the minor incidents that would have really surfaced some serious concerns before he started offending.
A rapper has been given a 12-year sentence for causing the death of a student by dangerous driving. Getz was speeding and over the drink-drive limit when he mowed down student Yubin Tamang in London last year. Sentencing, Judge Mark Lucraft acknowledged that the grime artist felt remorse.
A full apology has been made and a full acceptance of the sequence of events in the course of your driving that evening that are clear aggravating features of the driving. A quite appalling litany of events.
A man who killed 3 people in Nottingham had gone to MI5 headquarters 2 years before and asked to be arrested. Body-worn camera footage of Valdo Calacane has been shown to the Nottingham attacks public inquiry. And a 23-year-old man's been charged after one person was stabbed and another left with a head injury in Edinburgh. Officers were called out to a man with a bladed weapon in Calder yesterday. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down nearly 3%, falling 352 points to 10,427. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, cloud spreading north tonight. Light rain for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Cold in the north with frost patches and lows between 0 and 10 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to the programme. It's 4 minutes past 7. You're listening to Iain Dale on LBC. I'm here with you until 10, and if you'd like to watch the programme as well as listen to it, you can do so on Global Player, the LBC app or the LBC YouTube channel. Now, Thursday marks the 80th anniversary of the day that Winston Churchill coined the phrase the special relationship. 2 days before we mark that anniversary, Donald Trump has more or less shattered it with some incendiary remarks this afternoon about this country and our revered Prime Minister. Which leads me to ask, should we now accept that the special relationship is at an end, as the US has proved and is proving itself to be an unreliable ally? I'm slightly conflicted on this, if I'm honest, because all my life I've trusted the United States. I've valued its support for the UK in 2 world wars and various, but not all, conflicts since. And I fully realise that all relationships go through bumps in the road. I love America. I love Americans. It's the country I've been to more often than any other. I've tried over the years to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, possibly too often. I've tried to be even-handed and give him credit where it's due. But there does come a time when you just have to face the reality that our main ally in the world has to be seen in a new light. Yes, yesterday I was highly critical of Keir Starmer's decision not to go in fully with the US and Israel, and I haven't changed my mind on that. I also said that he risked blowing up the special relationship and his American-facing foreign policy of the last 18 months. But however critical I am of Keir Starmer's decision, there's no excuse for the insults thrown Starmer's way by Trump today. Starmer has since stuck by his words. He maintains he's done what is in Britain's national interest. Now, I disagree with his assessment of that, but he's done what he considers to be right. So let's hear what Donald Trump has had to say this afternoon. But first, here's what Winston Churchill said in Fulton, Missouri in 1946.
Neither the sure prevention of war nor the continuous rise of world organization will be gained without what I have called the fraternal association of the English-speaking peoples. This means a special relationship between the British Commonwealth and Empire and the United States of America.
But that special relationship has endured for 80 years, but I think it has certainly been fractured today. Whether it's been ended, well, looking forward to hearing your points of view on that. 0345 6060 973. Aggie Chambray, our Deputy Political Editor, is here, and she's going to be returning at 9 o'clock for a special Ask the Correspondents Hour with her and Simon Marks, beaming in live from Washington, D.C. Aggie, some extraordinary remarks by the President this afternoon, and Keir Starmer is standing by his words.
Absolutely. An extraordinary day. Of course, Keir Starmer said yesterday President Trump has expressed his disagreement with our decision not to be involved in the initial strikes, but it's my duty to judge what is in Britain's national interest. That's what I've done, and I stand by it. Today, he still stands by it, despite the fact that yesterday, Trump said he was very disappointed. And today, Ian, he said a whole lot more. So we're about to hear Trump refer to an island. That island is Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands, where of course, there is a British-controlled airbase which the US Air Force wasn't initially allowed to use to launch strikes on Iran. But first, the president turned his anger towards the Spanish government.
Some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases. And that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it. But we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him that we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people. But they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. A few minutes later, Ian, he decided he actually wasn't done criticising Sir Keir Starmer.
This is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have, that they gave away and took a 100-year lease, having to do with perhaps indigenous people claiming the island that never even saw the island before. What's that all about? And they ruin relationships. It's a shame. It's and that country, UK, and I love that country. I love it. My mother was born there. I love it. My mother was born there. My father was born. Right? He knows all about my father. My father was born there. So very places that you sort of automatically very feel warmly about. But the UK, what they're doing with energy and what they're doing with immigration is horrible. You have the North Sea. Somebody said yesterday, what would you do if you were the UK? Open up the North Sea. They got windmills all over the place that are ruining the country, ruining the landscapes, ruining the beautiful fields. Open up the North Sea. It's one of the greatest. Think of it. They buy their energy from Norway, which gets the energy, the oil, from the North Sea. So Norway drills in the North Sea and sells it to UK. And UK has a better part of the North Sea. Open up that. And number two, illegal immigration. They got to solve that problem. And I must say, that's not only UK, that's other parts of the European Union.
The key phrase in that, Aggie, I think, was they've ruined relationships, which you could interpret in a number of ways, but you could interpret it as, well, they've ruined the special relationship. Trump is never going to say that he has, but I think there is an argument that both Starmer and Trump have kind of ruined it.
I think that's probably right. And actually, for Keir Starmer, the good news, and there is only a small bit of good news for him in what has been an extremely difficult few days, is that lots in his party actually think this has put him in a stronger position domestically. And there have been some of his MPs who've been arguing for a while that actually he needs to stand up to Trump, that Trump only understands strength. And lots of people have been predicting that this sort of blow up, if we can call it that, was going to happen sooner rather than later. The trouble is, this is the same Prime Minister who has argued and argued and argued that having this very, very close relationship with Donald Trump was extremely beneficial to the UK, and the sort of cozying up to him would help the UK in the long run. And now to be in this quite difficult position where obviously the special relationship is not what it once was, considering all the language Donald Trump has used. Well, I think that is sort of quite difficult to argue is the right thing.
At least we're not Spain, hey? Because, I mean, by logic, if he's cut off Spain for not supporting the escapade in Iran, he should be cutting us off as well. He hasn't quite done that. Aggie, we will see you at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed. Professor David Dunn is Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham and specialises in US foreign and security policy. David, very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. What's your reading of these extraordinary events this afternoon?
Well, I think what they do is highlight just how much has changed. And actually, I disagree with you, Ian, in terms of actually giving equal blame to both the parties in this. Because what we are seeing here is Starmer actually saying that the special relationship isn't about subservience to an American leadership at whatever cost. It's actually founded on agreed common valuables and principles and indeed interests. And what we're seeing with Trump is an abandonment of the very foundations on which the special relationship as a prime subset of the transatlantic relationship is built. And that goes back really to 1941 and the Atlantic Charter, where the terms of the post-war order were set out, which was based on a world that was going to be characterized by systems to avoid the prospect of a third world war, by bringing in international law, by international institutions, by respect for sovereignty, by respect for human rights, by respect for democracy, and respect for international law.
I think David's line is frozen, judging by the video. So we'll see if we can get him back in just a moment. But the point that I was making about holding Starmer to blame a little bit as well was for this reason, in that Keir Starmer has spent the last 18 months essentially cozying up to Donald Trump and built what we all thought was a reasonable relationship with him. David, you're back, I think. I was just explaining to the listeners why I was apportioning some blame to Starmer here, because he spent the last 18 months trying to build a relationship with Donald Trump and keeping everything sort of behind the scenes if they disagreed. Whereas by deciding not to go in with Trump's raids on Iran, or at least not saying he supported them, as Canada, Australia, New Zealand have done, in a sense that has contributed to what Trump has said today.
Yeah, but the point here is that this action is manifestly illegal. right? There are two bases in which you can use the use of force legally, which is one is a Security Council resolution from the United Nations, or self-defense, either individually or collective self-defense, which is why there's a nuance in the policy after Britain came to the defense of the Gulf allies, right? But actually, what Trump has done is both illegally domestically, because he hasn't asked Congress, hasn't even informed Congress, and internationally, there is no basis. This idea that this is a preemptive war is not true, because...
Well, in your opinion, it isn't true, but in the opinion of the Canadian, Australian and New Zealand Prime Ministers, it is true.
Well, okay. Well, where's the evidence? We don't just go on opinions; we go on evidence, don't we? So, and there is no evidence that there was a preparation for an attack that required the
well, again,
Americans.
I mean, you're stating that as a fact. It isn't a fact. It's your opinion, because you look at the record of the Iranian regime over the years, and indeed in recent times, where it's launched attack after attack on Israel. So even if there's a debate over America's role in this, there can't be about Israel. You've muted yourself, David. Somehow. This is not going well, is it? Anyway, I think we're gonna have to leave it there, because we can't hear a word that you're saying, David, I'm afraid. But there we go. We have lots of calls coming in, as you can imagine. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Do you see this as the demise of the so-called special relationship? And if not, why not? Because it seems to me that there is really probably no coming back for this, certainly in the short term, for the relationship between Britain and the United States. Do you regret that? You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 17 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Idle money dozes in your current account, snoring softly, dreaming of doing absolutely nothing. But when you save with Monzo, your money's always busy. It sorts your salary into personalised pots, rounds up spare change, and saves it automatically. It even holds strategy meetings with your savings while you sleep. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. Monzo current account required. UK residents 18 plus. T's and C's apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
90 minutes past 7 on LBC. Andy has texted in saying, they only attack Israel when they've been attacked and you know it. No, I don't know anything of the sort, actually, because if you look at all of the different attacks that Iran has made on Israel, it's only when those attacks have been made that Israel has responded. There are one or two exceptions to that, but overall, Andy, you've got that completely the wrong way round. But I suspect you know that already. Let's go to Antonia in Bermondsey. Hi, Antonia.
Hi. Thank you, Iain. It's the first time that I talk with LBC in live. Listen, I want to say something. I'm very surprised that no one on the proud, patriotic British establishment consider one kind diplomatic answer to Mr. Trump. When he stated that this is not the age of Churchill, someone kindly should reply to him. It can be the age of the Churchill because it's not the age of Roosevelt. Because I think between Roosevelt and Mr. Trump there is one big Atlantic in all sense. So I think a little bit just to be more proud of the history of the Great Britain, because I have the passport of just 3 years. I'm Italian. I live in London for 20 years. And I have a maximum respect for the history of this country. And frankly, to be under the mood of this individual, this person, is not just to show to be patriotic. I understand that the national interest of one country, but should be in some sort of the limit. Iain, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your call. Thank you for your call, Antonia. I think there is a big difference between now and the time of Roosevelt and Churchill, because then, effectively, Britain and America were seen as equals. I mean, Britain was a world superpower. We're no longer a world superpower. And therefore, I think it is more difficult for a British Prime Minister to lay the law down. Now, Churchill he actually lived in the White House for 6 weeks, trying to persuade Roosevelt to get involved in the war. Roosevelt was, I think, possibly wanting to do it, but America in those days was very isolationist. And it was only when the Pearl Harbor attack happened that obviously America did get involved in the war. It's much more difficult for a British Prime Minister now. It doesn't matter who it is and what their personality is. But when you've spent the first 18 months of your premiership trying to effectively get into Donald Trump's good books, and I think quite successfully, actually, and then to ruin it all over this, I think is a misjudgment, because essentially Keir Starmer's foreign policy has gone up in smoke. His Chagos deal has gone up in smoke. Let's go to Michael in Chichester. Hello, Michael.
Hello, good evening, Iain. I think on the central question that the special relationship, as it was, is dead, as we saw from the time that we had with Churchill articulating that vision. It was really sort of met when it was embraced by Eisenhower, taking the Republicans who'd been American first and embedding them into the post-war world that Truman had created. And that's really the foundation. We talk about World War II, but really the modern foundation is that. It's the Allied system of America.
Up to a point, given what happened in Suez and where the Americans completely ditched us.
Well, hence American leadership. we had to follow American leadership. I don't think it was tonight. I think this happened. I mean, I served as many others did in Afghanistan, and I think the abandonment of Afghanistan, but then the completely rejection of our contributions over the last 20 years really did seal the end of a special relationship. And I think it means we've gone to a new world. It's more transactional, and I don't think that means we abandon everything. I happen to agree with you that I think we should certainly have gone to support the operations and allowed our bases to be used for this Iranian operation. As in Afghanistan, I remember carting around rockets that our special forces had relieved the Quds force of, and they were being used to attack our forces because they wanted longer range rockets to kill more of our soldiers. So I find this lawyerly approach by Starmer to be beyond exasperation. I think it's dangerous. I think that when a country has attacked our shipping, is a threat to our allies, a threat to the life and existence of Israel, and has attacked our shipping and had 20 terrorists, they're not terrorists, they're acts of war against operations by Quds force in this country, that's casus belli, that's an act of war. We have absolute justification to go to war with Iran in any one of those points. And I just find this whole Lord Herner supported distinction of immediacy. Immediacy is not a lawyer's decision. It is the decision of political leaders. And it's more complicated than just, were they just about to launch a rocket? It could well be, is this the last chance we have to destroy a capability which is existential, which we will not be able to stop, even if it will take 3 months to create? If it's the only chance to do it now, that's immediate. Especially if their intent is
and listen, we had the attack on RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, a British base, British sovereign territory, I think. And therefore, I mean, if there was any question about whether Britain could counterattack, I mean, that effectively meant that we had permission to, I would say, because you can act in self-defence. And yet the government, hang on a second, and yet the government is still pussyfooting around about sending this Type 42 destroyer to Cyprus. Yeah. I mean, surely the minute that attack happened, that decision should have been made.
Absolutely, and I think that's more about the fact that we simply haven't got the ships. We know we've got the carrier deployment NATO to the Arctic, Atlantic, and we simply haven't got the ships to do that and this. It breaks the model. I would like to just make one point about that, which is vital, actually. I was very annoyed it wasn't raised in Parliament. That it did clear things up when our base was attacked. And the fact that we then allow Israel and America to do what he called defensive operations, which is a nonsense, by the way, because there's no distinction once you've started a war and you're taking out all the capabilities, because everything's on the table. The fact that we're not joining in on attacks in Iran means that we are now effectively subcontracting that capability to the US, and we're putting our forces in danger, unless we're saying we can't actually add anything to the operation, which is not true. So I think that is the biggest thing about this Prime Minister, that he's making a decision purely designed to placate his backbenchers, which is actually putting our forces in danger because it is restricting our use of force to defend ourselves.
You're absolutely right. It's a point I made on the programme last night that I think it is shameful that we're, as you say, subcontracting our retaliatory action to the Americans. And I mean, I don't, even though I don't think he should have said it in the words that he said today, I can understand Donald Trump's frustration, but that should not come out into the public realm. That should be something that he and Keir Starmer resolve between themselves behind the scenes. That's where I think he's gone wrong.
Absolutely true. And I think he's not known for his decorum or his taking on the office in a way that we would expect to be out of respect. But I think we have to be completely on the side of our own national interest. And that means being very transactional.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. Somebody says here, why are you speaking with such desperation to go to war? I'm not. I don't want to go to war, but there are times when a country like Britain, or indeed any country, has to do what is the right thing. And I'm just saying what I think is the right thing, and that is to retaliate. I mean, Keir Starmer agrees with this. He thinks that you should cut off the Iranian munitions at source and bomb their factories, but he doesn't want us to do it. He wants the Americans to do it. I think it's disgraceful. Dave says, can we not go Friends style and just say we're on a break? We all hope whatever way it happens, when Trump is gone, normal service will be resumed. I think that's easier said than done, to be honest. I mean, that would be the ideal thing, but we will see. Right, let's go to Tamara in Notting Hill. Tamara, hi.
Hi, Ian. Hi. So I have to say, having listened to the previous caller, I'm starting to change my opinion a little bit, because I agree with you that if we are being attacked, we should retaliate. However, I have to say, the way Donald Trump has behaved towards us is not as a friend. A special relationship has been disgusting. He's recently insulted our armed forces who fought alongside U.S. in Iran and Afghanistan. A lot of people came back with body bags and PTSDs and injuries. And how dare he talk about our armed forces like this? First, he should apologise. So on that note,
he did apologise for that, even though it wasn't kind of the full apology that I think we might like to have seen.
But as it comes to Keir Starmer, generally I can't stand the man. I think he's a spineless, flip-flopping PM. He doesn't have any power of his convictions. So when he stood up to the US, in a way, when he said that we have to learn the lessons from Iraq and not just rush straight away as soon as the US asks us to yet another war in the Middle East, in a way I do agree with him in that respect, because we have seen what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Total disaster, destruction of the countries. And what have we gained from that war? Nothing. Just lots of body bags and nothing. The Middle East is just as unstable as it was. We need to be able to stand up to the American president, demand that he does things in a legal way, so not just to rush to the war and run his country like it's his own personal, mafia gang. The man doesn't respect anybody and anything. This doesn't respect the law. He doesn't respect his allies. He's talking about attacking Greenland, attacking Canada. He's a lunatic. He's a complete lunatic. So we can forget about special relationship with him. It's exasperating watching Keir Starmer up to recently, literally pandering to him as much as he possibly could to maintain this special relationship. It doesn't work when the other side is a total and utter lunatic. But in terms of Iran, I think we should go and retaliate because they've attacked our air bases and our personnel. We should do that, but we need to be a little bit more cautious with America because we're not America. Our armed forces are not as equipped as the US. We are nowhere near as strong as they are. So we need to really weigh what is in the best interest of our country. We don't want bombs suddenly starting to land on London, do we? So we've got to be very, very careful what we do. And I'm not an expert. I don't really know what to do. I really, really want to help Iran. I feel so sorry for these people. But is going and bombing yet another Middle Eastern country without proper strategy, what happens after? This strategy, what happens the day after, is one of the most important things.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Where we failed with Afghanistan. That's how you start having new Al-Qaeda popping up their heads. Because as in Charlie Wilson's War, famously, he said, we try to change some things and then we leave, instead of rebuilding the infrastructure there and showing those countries that we didn't just came to destroy, but we came to truly liberate them and help them build a modern democratic country. Then we wouldn't have those problems popping up all the time from that part of the world. That's where we always go wrong, and mostly America.
Okay, Tamara, thank you very much indeed. Very passionate there. And look, I agree with a lot of what you say. However, I don't necessarily agree that because things went wrong in Afghanistan and Iraq, that then they're almost certain to go wrong in Iran. I think it is important to know what will happen afterwards. I don't expect that Donald Trump would have laid that out. I'd hope the Americans have an idea of what will happen afterwards. But I appreciate that there will be a lot of people who are very sceptical about that. We'll come back to more of your calls, but we're also going to talk about, did you know, by the way, Rachel Reeves made her spring statement today? I mean, you could have been forgiven for missing it because it was so short, and said, actually, the sweet sum of Fanny Adams. But we will talk about it for a few minutes after the news, and then we'll take more of your calls on, is the special relationship shattered, and if so, who's to blame? It's 7:32. News headlines with Matt Hewitt.
Donald Trump has continued his criticism of Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. He says he's not happy after the UK's refusal to allow British bases to be used for initial strikes in Iran over the weekend. The Prime Minister's defended the decision, saying he's acting in Britain's national interest. The PM's confirmed a warship's being sent to Cyprus after Iran targeted the UK airbase there. HMS Dragon and anti-drone helicopters will be deployed. And about 100 people have gathered for a vigil in South London to mark 5 years since the killing of Sarah Everard. She was raped and murdered by policeman Wayne Cousins, who tricked her into thinking he could arrest her for breaking lockdown rules. LBC weather. Patchy clouds spreading north tonight with a few spots of drizzle. Cold in the north, lows between 0 and 10 Celsius.
This is LBC.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg. Flared, straight or skinny?
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
You know that feeling when your money is working for you? No? Well, make it! Open an investment account at XTB, make your first deposit and receive a free Rolls-Royce stock.
Rolls-Royce?
That's right. Own one of the best performing UK stocks this year for free. And if you like it, you can easily buy more stocks and ETFs with 0% commission. Join XTB and let your money work for you.
Your capital is at risk. Investments above €100,000 are charged at 0.2% commission. FX fees may apply. Limited availability. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:35 on LBC. Well, of course, This whole situation in the Middle East inevitably is going to have quite a big effect on Western economies, because if the IRGC are successful in really closing the Strait of Hormuz, obviously oil supplies won't be able to get through. We're already seeing a rise in the oil price. Gas prices have more or less doubled. So this is going to have quite a big effect. Well, here in Westminster, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has delivered her spring statement today, setting out the forecast for the UK economy, and she addressed the impact which the conflict might have.
With the unfolding conflict in Iran and the Middle East, it is incumbent on me and on this government to chart a course through that uncertainty, to secure our economy against shocks and protect families from the turbulence that we see beyond our borders.
Kamal Ahmed joins me now, editorial director for Europe of the business magazine Fortune. Kamal, welcome. It's difficult. I suppose we're only a few days into this, so it's quite difficult to say with any certainty what effect it might have on the UK economy in particular. But what do we know now that where you can say with some certainty what the effect will be?
Well, we certainly know, as you were pointing out, that the oil price has gone up by about 30% since the conflict started at the weekend. We know that the gas price has gone up. It shot up very heavily at one stage today, but it's gone back down to about 25%. So those effects are starting to be baked in. And the longer that the conflict goes on, the more risk there is to supply. But I think, Ian, we're maybe of a vintage that remembers back to things like the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, for example, when oil prices spiked in 1990 by 180%. The oil industry now is much more variegated. So US is the world's biggest oil producer. China has 124 days of supply of oil. And there are new places like Brazil and Guyana, which are supplying a lot of oil. So it's not the same shock as it used to be, but it's still significant. Just listening to Rachel Reeves, though, I think another point that I think is worth making for all of us is that Iran and conflict in the Gulf is largely priced in by many businesses. I'm speaking to you from Barcelona, from my hotel room. I'm at the Mobile World Congress, which a huge number of big tech companies are here. And really, Gulf volatility is so regular now that it is part of how you deal with the economy. So for the Chancellor to say, I may have to do more or that may change because of what's happening in the Gulf, I think probably isn't quite as solid as she imagines it might be. If you think about the things that have been announced today around unemployment levels, benefit levels, borrowing levels, the tax burden, the lack of growth more generally, I think that they're going to be have much more effect on the UK economy than whatever may be happening in the Gulf. One point, just finally then, Ian, I would say is we'll have to think about migration effects. Obviously, the UK government, the big debate in the UK is all about migration and the numbers of migrants. And if Iran does get to a situation where there's real implosion in that country, then similar to what we saw after the second Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, what we saw in Syria could happen again. I think that's a risk factor which hasn't been built in as yet.
You mentioned you're in Barcelona. What's been the reaction there to Trump's comments today about Spain, essentially saying he wants to cut off trade with Spain? I mean, there must have been quite a reaction to that.
Yeah, it's a wild ride, Ian. I haven't seen, this type of, and I'm not saying this pejoratively, but this type of leadership where you wake up in the morning and something very, very different will be on the agenda. Of course, we always know with President Trump, and I feel there is a bit of that now with the reaction of businesses. If this had been sort of in Trump's first term, there would have been a huge reaction to this as a real crisis. The fact is, there's not quite a shrug, that's too strong a way of putting it, but will he follow through? Is it legal? Does he really mean it? Will something happen again tomorrow which will change the president's mind? And in a way, just like the Gulf and the constant idea in business leaders' heads that you have to price in some degree of volatility from the Gulf, you now have the same response to the president's statements, because we've had a pretty significant tariff war against the whole of Europe for ever since the president came for his second term. And actually, Europe is looking to make much stronger relationships with India, with the Asian Pacific, and they are trying to turn away from such a heavy reliance on America. And so, again, in a way, not a shrug of the shoulders, but certainly not the reaction you may have seen in Trump's first term.
Kamal, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the delights of Barcelona. That's Kamal Ahmed there, editorial director for Europe of the business magazine Fortune. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question at 8. We convened this panel thinking, well, it's Spring Statement Day, so we need to have people who know their economic onions, and we've certainly got that. But obviously, there's lots of other things to talk about too. Dame Meg Hillier is Labour MP for Hackney South and Shoreditch. She chairs the Treasury Select Committee. Nadeem Zahawi, Reform UK campaigner, who's a former Conservative Chancellor, Paul Novak, who's General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, and James Wilde, Conservative Shadow Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury and MP for North West Norfolk. They'll be here from 8. In the meantime, let's take more of your calls. Simon is in the gloriously named Chafford 100. Hello, Simon.
Hello. Ian, you said something at the beginning of your programme that I wholeheartedly agree with. Whenever I go to America, I always come back with a warm feeling about American people. I like them. They're good people and they always make you feel welcome. But I don't think we've ever really had the special relationship that we think we've had. I mean, well, even if you go back to the Second World War, it was on America's terms. I mean, they only really got involved when their interests in the Far East were threatened. And prior to that, with Lend-Lease and other things, my goodness, did they make us pay for it? Mm. You know, and I think, you know, the point you made, Ian, about Starmer's foreign policy being up in flames now, but we're kind of assuming that we're dealing with a normal, rational Trump. We're not. I mean, I think personally, Starmer's right to refuse to be dragged in to a conflict without any clear objectives. Legal clarity, some people say it's legal, some don't. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. Even allied consensus. I mean, how many of the allies he's now complaining about were even consulted on this? Why should we be dragged into?
Well, no, I don't think anybody was consulted about it. I think with regard to Britain and Spain, Trump will have, or the American administration will have asked for permission for flights to take off from British and Spanish air bases, and that permission was refused. So that's what's got his goat. I wouldn't expect. This is not a NATO initiative, is it? So you wouldn't necessarily expect for all the other countries to be consulted.
But but possibly not. But don't you think, Ian, and this is the problem with Trump, and I think his constant outbursts, his unpredictability, proves why caution is essential from countries like us when the stakes, especially in that region, of all regions, are so high. And for him to start comparing Starmer to Churchill, I mean, anyone that's read a bit of history will know how much of an adventurer Churchill was. I mean, big elements of the Tory party were scared of him becoming prime minister and leading us into war because they didn't know, which direction he was going to take us off into. I mean, it's just. But America is not a reliable ally. Trump is not someone. He's not a normal, rational person that you can deal with. And maybe this falling out was always inevitable. Whatever happened, maybe it was always going to be that way. But I think all those people, and there's a lot of people saying, retaliate, Starmer's weak, retaliate. Well, they're not going to be saying that in 6 months' time when their gas and electricity bills are going through the roof.
Well, you may be right on that. I'm not sure that's a winning argument as to why we shouldn't have been involved. Some things are bigger than electricity bills, although at the moment you wouldn't necessarily know that. Now, news from Trump via Truth Social. I haven't read this before. I'm reading it out, so bear with me. Effective immediately, I have ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation, IDFC, to provide at a very reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, travelling through the Gulf. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. More actions to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump, heavily littered with capital letters, as you might imagine. Well, that is a big development, actually. I don't know whether the United States Navy can guarantee the security of every single ship that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, essentially, you're going to have to wipe out the IRGC, who are threatening to sink or set fire to any ship that attempts to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. But that is an interesting development. We'll follow up on that because I used to be an insurance correspondent for Lloyd's List International, and that would have been meat and drink to me in my days as an insurance journalist, which was 36 years ago, can you believe? Right, we've got Cross Question coming up at 8. We've got more of your calls to come and any updates that happen. And then at 9 o'clock, we've got Call the Correspondents with Aggie Chambray and Simon Marks. It's 7:46 here on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
You woke up this morning to one newspaper saying in their interview with Donald Trump he was very disappointed. Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister, Darren Jones. As regards the relationship we have with the United States, it's fair now to question our loyalty from our side of that relationship, Mr. Jones.
No, I don't accept that, Nick, because our relationship is important to us and it will continue to be. But it's also right that we make decisions in the UK based on our legal frameworks, our own plans and British interests.
But you're the lawmakers, Mr. Jones. The legal framework is set by you and your colleagues. If, and I put it to you that the legal framework perhaps here is not working, that is for you and your colleagues to change.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
A Southern train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to recharge yourself and your phone. To stretch out, sit back, and when you hear "all change please," you'll know you already have. Go with your flow and save with advance tickets at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
The Hillary sale ends soon, so get window-wise and grab these amazing offers while you still can. Like up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, grab £50 off your electric blind order and conveniently control your blinds for less. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the Hillary sale ends on the 9th of March. Conditions apply.
It's time to scale up that fishmonger business, Anne. With free day-to-day online banking from Virgin Money, you'll be a big fish in no time. Now that's a real catch of the day. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus fees apply for chaps and international payments. Terms and exclusions apply. Backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name of Clydesdale Bank PLC.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:49. Louis says, Keir Starmer may not be perfect, I think more conservative. We can be critical of him, but that scumbag Trump should have more respect for others. Furthermore, I would rather Starmer as PM than Trump any day of the week. Right, let's go to Yasha, who's in Ascot. Hello, Asha.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Actually, I just want to say I think the government made the mistakes to not join the Americans, because everyone knows that you are not attacking a democratic country or free country. You are attacking a government who everyone knows what they have done in the last 47 years. They killed thousands of Iranians. They killed foreigners, the hostaging dual nationality, English people, British people, French people, Americans, everyone. They are not trying to avoid to harm. They just try to harm everyone. Everyone. If they had missiles to fire to get to the UK, they were firing it by now. And then look at the consequence. Yet now these governments are going, hopefully, and new ones gonna come, and hopefully people in Iran can live in peace and be free.
Well, I agree with you, but there are a lot of hopefulies there, aren't there?
You know, I believe UK government in the past made mistakes, and they should have come this time for a good cause and helping the Americans and the Israeli to get rid of these ones, because they should have gone many, many years ago. Everyone remember when Ahmadinejad become a president, he said that Israel has to be wiped out. That's the reason I'm here. That's the reason many Iranians are abroad. You should have seen the celebration in London, in Finchley, in America, in Toronto, in Australia, everywhere, even inside Iran. People with fear. We are still celebrating it.
Yasha, why do you think it is, though, that a lot of commentators, a lot of the general public just don't seem to understand why how this regime has killed so many people, has launched terror across the Middle East, and yet people seem to think that they should be supported rather than the Americans?
Because they don't know the history of these ones, or they forgot. Everyone should remember they captured British soldiers in the Persian Gulf when Ahmadinejad was a president. And then Nazanin Zaghari, how many years she was in prison? Yeah, now there is another British couple in Iran, they are in jail. Why they should be there? They should be free. So they are dangerous. They are dangerous people. You know, if you have a dog, you can take your dog outside for a walk. But in Iran, you might get arrested, they might take the dog away, and they're probably going to kill the dog. How do you going to feel about that? Someone come, take your dog, and kill it because the dog is haram. That's not true.
Yasha, thank you very much for your call. Steve says, Starmer has gone up in my books. He stood up to Trump despite knowing the kickback from the American administration. Trump is under huge pressure domestically, and this war with Iran will increase that. Ali's in Finchley. Ali, hi.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me. I would like to say I'm really disappointed from Keir Starmer. I don't think he knows what is actually British national interest, and he's blowing up the special relationship with Americans and President Trump over the terrorist regime. So who's going to choose? Is he choosing Islamic regime, or is he standing by the terrorist regime, or is he standing with American Israelis? I think it's a time for him to have a bit of courage and boldness in decision-making and drop the overly cautious approach and think about long-term futures, not just for Iranians, just for British. Just imagine a free Iran who British people or British businesses can invest. And Iran is like 100 times or bigger than Dubai or UAE or any other Persian Gulf countries. So you can invest there. And it's time for him to support American and Israeli, and don't just hide behind these excuses of that, the war is illegal and is oppressive. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the terrorist regime who's already started the war in 1979. He's already started the war against the democratic world. He's already started the war against Americans. He wants to kill all the Jews. He wants to destroy Israel. He's killing his own people in 3 hours. In last month, he killed over 90,000 people. So just imagine if they got the nukes and they've got the ballistic missiles to reach to London. So what's going to happen? So why are you scared of? Why we have to still conservative about these things? When we're talking about international law, who's wrote this all in international law? Who drafted these laws? The international law should be redrafted after this regime is gone, and we should expose who made these businesses, who bought these oils from them and sell and giving all this money to them so they can kill more.
Okay, Ali, thank you very much indeed. Ursula says, I think the special relationship is probably on pause. We want the USA to help with Ukraine. We should be supportive. Let's go to Richard, who's in Bletchley. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Ian. Good to speak to you again.
Hi.
Right, the point, I've got a couple of points to make. I've looked at some polls. I think there's been quite a few polls actually in America, and they are not supporting the war. I saw one, the efficacy was 27% supporting the war and about 40 odd against. And I think that was before things have gone worse, if you see what I mean, in terms of American lives. And I would just think we're supposed to be supporting something that our own people who voted in are not wholeheartedly supporting. And you mentioned, it's different to Afghanistan and Iraq, but it's going to be the same situation where, and you'll get retaliatory strikes in revenge. So especially the more we join in, the more there'll be terrorist attacks. And you say, well,
yeah, but that's been the argument of appeasers through the decades, hasn't it? I mean, that's an argument for not taking any action ever.
But then, if you move on to what is the action, if I thought they were about to launch a nuclear weapon, then I would. But I really don't. And then there was a claim of long-range missiles, which sounds very like weapons of destruction. Which doesn't mean they don't happen now. The fact they haven't launched a weapon, a long-range missile.
Well, it's because they haven't got one at the moment, but they are developing one.
I'm not talking about nuclear.
No, I know.
If they haven't got a long-range missile, then it must be miles away from having nuclear. Because to start with, the technology for that is light years behind what you need for nuclear. Also, Trump himself, you've probably heard this before, where he said he'd wipe them out, and it just doesn't seem to be. And as to the regime, I really, apart from supporting Israel, I doubt he could care less. And I would also, when you mentioned about standing up for things, well, where I would really like Trump and our country following it to stand up to was where the real threat to a sovereign country was Ukraine, where a country has actually been 100% invaded. It's not a threat of, it's invaded. And it just seems to me like this is really... I've had to back down there, so I can look big here. And I think with a person like Trump, that is all it's about. Is a lot of people said, it's 9,000. That just seems like some conspiracy thing. Whereas I don't think that's the case. But I do think he couldn't admit that his pride's been hurt. He's not sorted that conflict out. Let's look for somewhere else to. Show the might of America, but the might of somebody is standing up to a bully, not standing up to somebody.
I agree with you on Ukraine, but you're putting two and two together there, and in your mind making four, but you might as well have made 56 because until the history books are written, we won't know the truth of that. People think that he's done it just to divert attention away from the Epstein files. All sorts of reasons are being sort of brought out, but I think often it's not conspiracy that really sets the agenda here.
No, well, that's a fair point, but I just think they haven't got concrete evidence of this, nuclear weapons, and there's just not an imminent threat.
Well, in your view, I mean, you are talking a bit like an armchair general.
No, but well, that's all I am, isn't it? I'm actually sat on a settee, not on an armchair. No, you're right there, but you need evidence of something. You can't disprove something that doesn't exist. If I saw concrete evidence, here it is, here's a nuclear weapon, and I just really, really don't. And as well, if his own my main point was if his own people aren't supporting him, they're obviously not convinced. and they are convinced behind him on a lot of things which we would disagree with. So
all right.
That's my main
Thank
point.
you very much, Richard. Karen says, Ian, please will you patriotically support our leaders' policies instead of just keeping quiet while the British are being verbally attacked? I refer the Right Honourable Lady to my monologue at the beginning of the hour because I kind of did that then, Karen. You can always listen back on Global Player. Coming up in the next hour, it is Cross Question. We have with us Dame Meg Hillier, Labour MP for Hackney South and Shoreditch. She chairs the Treasury Select Committee. Nadeem Zahawi, Reform UK campaigner. He's also former Conservative Chancellor. Paul Novak, General Secretary of the TUC. And James Wilde, Conservative Shadow Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury and MP for North West Norfolk. Well, we'd love questions on Iran. We'd love questions on the spring statement, on the state of the economy, what might happen to the economy after what's happening in Iran, because there's bound to be some effects on that. 0345 6060 973. And don't forget, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Donald Trump's criticised Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. He's not happy after the UK refused to allow British bases to be used for initial strikes in Iran. John Bolton, former United States ambassador to the UN, says a special relationship is about more than the leaders.
That's not how Trump sees it. He thinks all of international relations are embodied in the personal relationships between leaders, which is why if he's irritated at Keir Starmer, that means something. But for the two countries themselves, the relationships are far deeper.
Meanwhile, President Trump says the US Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible if necessary. It's after it was closed by Iran yesterday. Here, the Ministry of Defence says British F-35 jets have shot down an Iranian drone over Jordan. It's the first time the jets destroyed a target on operations as part of the UK's defensive operation to protect British interests. Elsewhere, the UK economy is predicted to grow just 1.1% this year after the budget watchdog downgraded forecasts. The Chancellor's used her spring statement to insist she has the right economic plan. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down nearly 3%, falling 352 points to 10,427. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, patchy clouds spreading north tonight with a few spots of drizzle, lows between 0 and 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening. Welcome to Tuesday's Cross Question. It's 8:03. Joining me on the panel to my left, Dame Meg Hillier, Labour MP for Hackney South and Shoreditch. She chairs the Treasury Select Committee. To her left, James Wilde, Conservative Shadow Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury and MP for North West Norfolk. To my right, Nadeem Zahawi. Now, I've got here Reform UK campaigner. Is that the accurate description?
Good enough title.
Fine. Former Conservative Chancellor. And next to him, Paul Novak, General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress. You'll notice a sort of economic theme to this panel. We thought we'd just be discussing the spring statement today, but should we say events, dear boy? Events have taken over, so we'll take questions on anything you like. But I would love to hear from the panel their views on the effect on the economy of what's going on in Iran in the short term and the long term. But it's up to you. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. And you can, of course, watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Let's take our first question. It's a WhatsApp question from Jim in Lincoln. Keir Starmer very proudly said that he was operating in the national interest when refusing to grant the US permission to use British military bases for strikes in Iran. Let's be frank, it's in Britain's national interest to have a close working relationship with the US, whether we like it or not. Is this yet another example that Starmer simply can't navigate politics and is out of his depth when it comes to leadership? Paul Novak.
Well, of course, it's in our national interest to have a close working relationship with the US, but it's also in our national interest to respect international law. And I think the Prime Minister made the right call. This is an action that's been launched by the US and Israel that has no foundation in international law. Now, I'm not an apologist for the Iranian regime, and we wrote to the Iranian embassy just a few weeks ago to talk about the treatment of the Iranian people by the regime, the treatment of Iranian trade unions. Funnily enough, I didn't get one, Ian. We're not on their Christmas card list, let's put it that way. But I think the way that you resolve those issues is not, as the Prime Minister said, regime change from the air. So I think he was doing the right thing in Britain's national interest. And I think it's really important that we don't allow ourselves to be dragged kicking and screaming into a war that, frankly, is being provoked by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, with at least one eye on their domestic polls and domestic electorates.
You don't think Iran has provoked it at all?
Well, of course, nobody wants to see Iran develop nuclear weapons, but there's been a long-established process of trying to reach agreements at the negotiating table, and I think that's the way you handle these diplomatic issues. And I don't think launching arbitrary attacks without any authorization or even discussion through the United Nations is the way to go about those sorts of international
What do you say to the fact that Canada, New Zealand, Australia have all supported Donald Trump in doing this? And of course, we know that Mark Carney is not exactly Donald Trump's biggest fan. So why do you think they've done that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're going to have to take decisions that they think are in the best interest of their countries. I think the Prime Minister was acting in the best interest of this country and of the British public. And also, we all benefit. We all benefit from having strong multilateral international organisations and undermining them, as Donald Trump has done time after time, whether it's threats against Greenland, whether it was the kidnap of Maduro, whether it's slapping arbitrary tariffs on close allies like the UK. I think he's proven himself to be an unreliable ally. And the Prime Minister, I think, has tried to navigate the relationship as best he can. But he's got to stand up for what he thinks is the best interest of the British public.
Nadeem Zahawi, you were shaking your head during a lot of that.
Yes, I was. If you listen to Steve Witkoff in the first meeting with the Iranian negotiators, they themselves admitted that they have 460 kilograms of enriched uranium at 60%. Now, to get to 90%, which is weapons grade, takes about a week to 10 days. So they would have had 11 nuclear warheads ready within a week to 10 days. Now, you don't have to believe Steve Witkoff or...
But we were told that Trump had eliminated...
Hold on a second. Let me just finish this point. Right? Paul and some of his colleagues simply don't like President Trump. But you don't have to believe Steve Witkoff. Ask Mark Rutte of NATO, who would say that the Iranians have been effectively taking everybody for a ride, from President Obama to the previous Conservative government. All this stuff about the JCPOA was simply not true. They had carried on. They've been 460 kilograms, 11 nuclear warheads. Now imagine a world if President Trump hadn't done what he's done, where Iran declares it is a nuclear power. What would that do?
Seriously, lightly in the next 2 weeks?
No, wait. Before this operation.
3 or 4 days into this operation.
I didn't interrupt you. I listened to you very carefully, so don't interrupt me, please. I beg you, because otherwise we're not having a discussion here, and the listeners will actually get a terrible programme if we cut across each other. Imagine what would happen in the Middle East if this operation hadn't taken place and Iran had become a nuclear state. You'd have the Saudis saying we need to go nuclear. You'd have a chaos across the region, and British safety and security.
But Nadeem, your argument falls down because a year ago we were told that Donald Trump's and Israel's bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities had wiped out their capabilities.
So look, you're presented with the evidence, you have to deal with the situation as you find it, not as you wish it to be. As I think it was, I can't remember whether it was Clinton or I think it was President Clinton who said, hope is not a strategy.
His whole presidency was founded on hope.
The operation last year degraded Iran's capability to enrich. They still had 460 kilograms.
Okay, well, you've made that point.
60% enriched uranium.
Let's get Meg into the debate. Let's go back to the question. I mean, do you feel that Keir Starmer has handled this in the right way?
Yes, and I think Paul's put it very well. He's acted in the national interest, been very clear that we're not going to be the aggressor, but we will defend British personnel, British bases, and British citizens.
No, he's left that to the Americans.
Well, that we're allowing defensive action through our bases, and I think that he's absolutely right. That he's people he's sometimes criticised for being a lawyer, but in this case, he really does understand the law, and that this is not illegal action. And I think he has taken a very steady, careful approach to this, and I think that's right. We don't want to be wading into what is already, a war in the Middle East. Let's hope it doesn't go on for long, but we don't know. It's worse than this time last year when it lasted about 12 days. And I think he's been very thoughtful and sensitive, and I have to say he has the full backing of the Parliamentary Labour Party, which, let's be honest, in recent times hasn't always been the case. But it was a very strong support for him and this position, because this is really the right thing for the country. And I think it is important that he acts in the best interest of the country. That's his responsibility as Prime Minister. And with respect, Nadine, you're not in government now. He has access to far more information than any of us because he's the Prime Minister. But he's made the judgment, and he's made the right one.
Yeah, that's exactly the wording that I used in 2003 about Tony Blair. He's the Prime Minister, he knows more than us, so I trust my Prime Minister to do the right thing. Look where that got us.
Well, look, I mean, I just don't know where Nadeem's getting his information from, that's all. I am not aware of all of that, but the Prime Minister obviously is privy to more than we will know. But I think he's made the right decision in defending British interests and being cautious, quite rightly, about British armed forces wading directly into this challenging situation in the Middle East.
James.
Well, I think he made a mistake in not supporting our closest ally and allowing them to use bases. Of course, one of those bases he wants to give away when there's no need to. Clearly, Iran represents a threat to the UK. The head of MI5 has said there's been over 20 plots that they have foiled on British soil. And Akrotiri has been attacked by the Iranians, and the Prime Minister has taken absolutely no action in response. And the Americans have been building up their flotilla for about 3-4+ weeks. And only now has the Prime Minister decided he's going to send a Type 45 to defend that base. I think he hasn't showed the leadership which we would really expect him to have done. And now he's also allowed the US to use those bases, which he didn't allow at the weekend. So I think he's got a slightly confused position here.
But what about the remarks of Donald Trump today, where he's issued some fairly insulting remarks about Keir Starmer and indeed, I would say, the UK? I mean, can we really still treat America as our main ally, as we traditionally have done, when he comes out with these comments? I mean, he's made far worse comments about Spain, it has to be said today, but even so.
Well, I think we need to, because they are our closest partner, particularly on the military side of things. And I think it's disappointing that the Prime Minister has allowed a distance get between us and the Americans. And I'm not defending the comments that the President's made about the Prime Minister. Other people can judge if they think the Prime Minister is a Churchillian character or not. I'm sure your listeners and viewers will have some thoughts about that. But I think this is meant to be the closest partnership. And the Prime Minister previously was talking about how close he was to President Trump, how he'd secured a trade deal, to benefit steel and other sectors. But now he's moved away, and we've got to this unfortunate position. So I think he needs to be working harder to rebuild that relationship for our national security interests.
But I think he's doing it for our national security interests, the way he's behaving now, and not just piling in because America says so. And I think we've got to have a robust relationship with America. And let's be clear, President Trump says one thing one week and another thing the next. So look how he's been backwards and forwards on tariffs. So, next week or whenever he has his state visit, I'm sure he'll be, well, I'm not sure because no one's ever sure, are they, with him? But he may well be coming up with different views. And I think it's just, he likes to grab the headlines. I think it's just cheap politics.
I mean, there have been bumps in the special relationship over the years. I mean, Harold Wilson refused to provide troops in Vietnam when Lyndon Johnson wanted him to. Ted Heath and Richard Nixon certainly did not get on. I mean, Nadine, do you think this is sort of the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, as Churchill might have said?
No, look, I think the relationship will remain special, whoever is the occupant of number 10 or the Oval Office. I think it needs some mending. I think it is heartbreaking. I've been speaking to some of our allies in the region, and rather than being critical, they just think we're an irrelevance. And that's a terrible place to be when President Macron put his squadron at the service of the UAE, when he's just sent an aircraft carrier. As we've just heard, this has been going on for 4 or 5 weeks. These negotiations have been very serious. You don't have to, as I say, don't have to believe Steve Witkoff and the American. And Meg, I didn't make up my numbers. Steve Witkoff on the record. Can I just finish, please? Steve Witkoff on the record said that the first meeting with the Iranians, they themselves volunteered that they have 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. And today, Mark Rutte repeated the same thing, that the Iranians were very close to a nuclear weapon. The world would be a very different place if we'd allowed that to happen. I just feel, in many ways, heartbroken that the United Kingdom is an irrelevance when it comes to the security and safety of the region.
That's a bit rich.
I'm just saying to you what I'm hearing back, Meg. I'm not making this up.
Come on, let us speak.
That's a bit rich from a man who was in government at the time when we saw our spending on defence diminish. And I spent a long time looking at defence spending. When I looked at public spending week in, week out, there was a regular occurring £40 billion gap in the 10-year equipment plan and many other issues. We didn't have enough capability to deploy. And although this government's now putting money into defence, it's going to take a long time to catch that up. And that was the government that you were a part of.
First of all, I make no excuses for the mistakes that we made in the previous government, although I have to say Boris Johnson did make a 24 billion real terms increase in defence spending. Not particularly well spent. I think the world is changing rapidly, and Meg, you are equally expert in this area, and I take nothing away from you on that. But nevertheless, what we need to see is that 3.5% spending delivered. And we now, at reform... But
the fact is, if your government hadn't cut defence spending so much, we wouldn't have to be making such a catch-up.
And I just opened by saying, I'm the first to say that we made mistakes in government, and that's something that...
Pretty big mistake.
I don't disagree with you. And I just think you look at where the world is today with what is happening in Ukraine. We need the United States to remain resolute and steadfast in support of
why
Ukraine.
Why should the electorate...
effectively saying to them, look, when you need just to use the bases, nothing more. They only ask to use the basis to be able to conduct this operation to stop Iran reaching.
So why should the electorate trust you, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, all of you say we made all these mistakes in government, and yet you want to be part of a reform government?
Because if you are putting the UK national interest ahead of party interest, the only way we can deliver that is to get round Nigel Farage, to give him the ability and the capacity to form a government in the national interest to deal with things.
But all you failures would be senior members in that
illegal migration. Government. You're seeing, I think, yesterday we had another 300 illegals coming through. These are men of fighting age from some of the most difficult war zones in the country. Yet this government does nothing. Any other country in the world would have called a national emergency by now. This government has done nothing on that. And I just felt that it was my duty, if I want this country to do well, the country's given me everything, to actually rejoin the political frame and do something about it.
Let's talk about Nigel Farage's special relationship with Donald Trump, because he was there cheerleading when Donald Trump was slapping tariffs on UK automotive companies and UK steel companies. Of course he was. He was over in the US cheerleading on Donald Trump when British jobs
Your
were
hatred of Trump
placed directly at risk.
Blinds you, Paul.
Completely blinds. I'm standing up for British work.
I'm standing up for British work, and I'll tell you what.
That was never Nigel Farage's position.
What now, Nadeem? I think a lot of those were voters in the Red Wall, and voters in seats like Clacton do not like Nigel Farage's relationship with Donald Trump. They see it as a liability. And just going back to the original question, over the last few days, we've seen different reasons advanced by the US administration and different members of the US administration about the war that they've launched. Sometimes it's about nuclear weapons, sometimes it's about conventional weapons, sometimes it's about regime change. They are going to repeat the mistakes of Iraq, launching a military assault with no idea about what the end game is, no idea about how they're going to replace the leadership if the leadership of Iran is decapitated, and no idea about reconstruction.
You also had Marco Rubio saying, well, we only really did it because Israel were going to do it anyway, so we thought we'd better take part, which I mean, even though I support what they've done, I was quite shocked by that.
So let's return to the reason. Right?
Well, no, you've articulated your argument on the reason many times.
But, Ian, you can't keep brushing that aside, right? That's a pretty major reason, right? When Israel and the United States have evidence, by the way, and it never is not necessarily delivered by intelligence, by the Iranian negotiating team themselves. They came to the negotiating table and said,
I'm not disputing that, but you've said it 4 times now, so we get the message.
But I know, but you sort of say you get the message, then you brush it aside. But Marco said this,
because it doesn't,
and I don't like.
It's using up valuable time when you continually make the same argument time after time to reinforce it. I get why you're doing it.
It's a pretty serious argument.
Okay.
When a country that has murdered 40,000 of its own people, right, has attacked the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, right, when none of those countries allow their airspace or any American base to be used, you would rather say, oh, well, because I don't like Trump, I'm not going to take away the nuclear capability.
I think you'll agree, in the first 21 minutes, you've had more than your fair share of airtime. So let's move on to another subject in just a few moments' time, because we have to go to a break. It's 21 minutes past 8.
Conflict in the Middle East. Follow live on LBC.
At Lloyd's, we love that moment a dream becomes a reality. Like for Rob, he's in the supermarket when his phone bleeps. It's his daughter. She's in Manchester, at uni. The message is short. She's happy. And just like that, Rob knows every penny he invested and saved was worth it. He texts her back, heart emoji. At Lloyd's, we've been asking the nation about their dreams. That's how we know Rob's story and thousands of others just like it. We've been backing the nation's aspirations for 250 years. So when it's time to realise your dreams, we're ready when you are. Bank on Lloyd's.
When laughter's guaranteed. When there's fun and games with big names. When it's something everyone in the family loves watching.
Who do you think the surprise guest is?
No way they'll top last week's.
I think they have.
Nothing brings us together like great TV. And the TV licence covers you to watch all TV channels, packed full of entertainment for a big night in. Search TV Licence Together.
A Southern train is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep for a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
22 minutes past 8. Now, we have what is in the trade termed a feisty panel tonight. Dame Meg Hillier is here, Labour MP for Hackney South and Shoreditch. She chairs the Treasury Committee, Select Committee of MPs. And Nadeem Zahawi, Reform UK campaigner, former Conservative Chancellor. Paul Novak, General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress. And James Wild, Conservative Shadow Exchequer Secretary of the Treasury and MP for North West Norfolk. Right, our next question comes from Gordon in Hampstead, who says President Trump said today he did not have the yips, which is a golfing term, about putting boots on the ground in Iran if necessary. Do the panel have the yips over the same issue? Meg?
I would be very concerned. And
as a renowned golfer yourself.
Well, happily in the break, I should confess that someone explained to me what the so thank you, Paul. I haven't ever played golf, so probably that's going to make me very popular with half the audience. But no, I mean, seriously, I think the Prime Minister's in absolutely the right place on this. We would not want to see boots on the ground, and I would be very nervous for some of the reasons we've already discussed about any boots on the ground from the Americans or anyone, because unless you have a plan of campaign and a plan, an end game in mind, then this is the craziest situation to be in. It could just be a very prolonged and painful and bloody situation. What's happening in Iran has been terrible for the people there, but I don't think that this will help. And I can't see how this will. I'm at a loss really as to what the game plan is by the Americans and why boots on the ground would help.
Well, James Wild, if there was regime change, surely, I mean, there's got to be some sort of interim sort of governance of Iran, and surely there would need to be boots on the ground in those circumstances.
Well, it's clearly a volatile and uncertain picture. I reflect back on the 3 years I spent in the Ministry of Defence around 2014 when ISIS, Daesh were marauding through Iraq and Syria. And we were part of the global coalition that took action there to defeat and degrade them. But we did not put British or American or coalition troops onto the ground. We worked with local forces because we learnt the lessons from previous campaigns where putting in Western forces was not going to be successful. So I don't think there's a question of UK troops or US forces, I would suspect, being deployed in this scenario. I think we need to learn from the lessons of history here.
Paul?
I wouldn't support British troops on the ground in Iran. I don't think the British public would support British troops on the ground in Iran. And this is part of the problem, because it's easy to talk about regime change, and yet we know from Iraq to Afghanistan to Libya, it's much harder than just making a speech and expecting everything to work out okay. I think this is really, again, where we need to think about the value of multilateral institutions and the UN in particular. And I think we need to get into a UN process and under the aegis of the UN as quickly as possible.
The UN in recent years have proved themselves to be totally ineffective, though, haven't they?
Well, that's partly because the US, in particular, has proven itself to be an unreliable partner to the UN as well. And I think Mark Carney made in that speech, you talked about Mark Carney before, we've often talked up international institutions, but not given them the power that to go along with the responsibilities that they hold. And I think, actually, if you're serious about bringing peace to the Middle East, not just in Iran, a two-state solution for Palestine and Israel, a safe and secure Israel and a safe and secure and free Palestine, you've got to involve the UN. And frankly, a board of peace type arrangement ain't going to cut it.
Nadeem?
So it's no coincidence that President Trump spoke to the Kurdish leaders in Iraq yesterday. If you look at the makeup of Iran, 93 million people, it's about 10-12% Baluchis, about slightly more Kurds. The Kurds are probably the most organised fighting force in Iran. I think what President Trump was trying to say today is, look, nothing's off the table. I think that's probably the right position for the US, who's taking a lead in this campaign. The lesson from Iraq, and as you know, my family fled Iraq in the late 70s.
You've written a very good book about it.
I have indeed. The real lesson is the mistake we made post-war is the de-Baathification program, i.e. Effectively sacking anyone who belonged to the Ba'ath Party, which was basically the whole country, because if you didn't belong to the party, you couldn't get a job. And I think the real lesson from this is when this regime falls, not if, when this regime falls, is to make sure that actually you try and preserve the ability for people to put food on the table, to have jobs to go to, get the schools back open, the universities. Iran is a very, very well-educated nation, as you can see by their mechanical engineers sadly put to the wrong use, an evil use of making drones and ballistic missiles. But highly, I think probably the highest per capita number of degrees and PhDs in the world. And I think it is incumbent on all of us to sort of lean in and make sure that whoever takes over from the Ayatollahs is able to pull the country back together. There needs to be a sort of truth and reconciliation process because of the number of innocents who've been murdered by the regime. 40,000 just in the recent uprising against the regime. So all of that, I think, needs to happen, and needs to happen pretty quickly. But I think, it's unnecessary for us to be down on ourselves because of the mistakes from Iraq. We just got to learn from those mistakes and hopefully have a much better future for Iran. Iran will be a phenomenal economic power, not just for its own self, but for the region as well when it opens up. It's rich in minerals, but also, most importantly, rich in human resource.
Right, let's do a very quick question here, so literally 30 seconds each. Nikki in Kent says, where is it more dangerous, London or Dubai?
Shall I go for that first? Because I don't
Feel
think
free.
anywhere's very safe at the moment. I think this is the global challenge is very real, and we are facing very real challenges. So right now, people are being bombed in Dubai. It's very scary for people there. But, we've seen drones over Belgium. So, and I mean, when I have conversations with constituents on doorsteps in Hoxton in my constituency, talking about drones over Belgium, that's not something that would have been happening a few years ago. So people are very worried about the instability in the world. So this is why we need solid leadership from our Prime Minister to keep British interests safe.
I think the point of the question was slightly tongue-in-cheek, saying, well, look, people are flocking to Dubai from this country. Some say it's because of the safety issues in London.
That has passed me by then, because as a London MP, I'd say London's very safe. I don't feel, there are issues, but I think that we're much safer than we used to be.
Isn't Finsbury the murder capital of London?
Well, no, I don't represent Finsbury for a start, but I think Finsbury's unlikely.
No, I was mistaking you for Emily Thornbury.
No, and to be honest, no, crime has gone down. Although obviously in a big metropolitan city, you're going to have crime. Okay. It actually has reduced massively.
Well, I've spoken to constituents, friends who are currently in Dubai who are feeling incredibly concerned. So I'd say clearly Dubai is more dangerous. I think a lot of people have left the UK for Dubai largely because of the hikes in tax that the Chancellor has put on entrepreneurs and investors, and she's driven away possibly up to 10,000 people from the UK, according to some reports, people who were investing in our country and have taken that wealth elsewhere. And we've seen today in her announcements that she hasn't done anything to unwind any of those damaging tax rises that are causing so much harm to our country.
Nadeem.
Well, I've got two sons in the UAE at the moment, and I would say London after 9 p.m. would feel a lot more dangerous than Dubai. I think, to James's point.
Sorry, I just have to say, stand up as a Londoner. I certainly walk around my constituency at night and have no worries.
You try and walk down any street in London and have any form of jewellery on. Most people will, certainly that I've spoken to are pretty worried about muggings in London. And,
I think perhaps he's looking at the figures don't bear out the fear.
Didn't you have an interaction with Nick Ferrari recently?
I did. I did, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't feel safe.
You came across a man who was sleeping.
No, he wasn't sleeping. I didn't want to go into the detail at the time, and I still will refrain from going into the detail, but he was pretty agitated state, and I was discussing the feeling of people feeling less safe around our great city.
Do you not think that is the case in many capital cities?
Listen, I don't know, but all I can say to you is most of my friends, a lot of your listeners will be thinking after 9 p.m, it's a pretty dangerous place because of the level of muggings. And you see that in the middle of broad daylight in Knightsbridge, the Rolex shop gets basically raided with machete-wielding robbers who just were happy to go at people who are just trying to take evidence of this thing.
Well, Paul's from Liverpool. He knows all about this.
I'm not surprised.
Ian, you don't want to go
I'm not surprised. All I would say is it's not just the millionaires and billionaires that James spoke about. If you look at the figures today, I know if you look at the figures today from the Spring Statement, we're losing actually 60,000 of the most talented Brits. To places like Dubai because of
it's the same old scaremongering. Actually, look at the facts. In 2024, 0.3% of the UK's millionaires left the country. They probably left for all sorts of reasons, and it's a strange sort of patriotism.
Do you celebrate that?
No, it's a strange sort of patriotism, James. Where if you leave a country that helped you create that wealth because you don't want to pay a fair share of tax towards schools and hospitals and safe streets, by the way, because our taxes pay for the police. Listen, I've been living and working in London, in Britain's second city, London, for the best part of 2 decades now. I have never once been threatened or assaulted. I walk around the streets of London, all parts of London, on a regular basis. I've never once been threatened or assaulted. Granted, I'm not wearing as much bling as you, Nadeem, but I still feel relatively safe. And so I think we do our country a disservice when we're constantly talking up the threat of crime, which actually, of course, there are victims of crime. But let's not kid ourselves that we're going to go out on the street and cower on our way back home tonight.
Absolutely. And then Nadeem wraps himself in the Union Jack and with reform, and then he talks our country down. And
I don't talk the country down. Quite
you've just been talking now.
Quite the opposite.
I'm going to talk you all down now because we have to go to the news. It's 8:33 on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the headlines.
Donald Trump's taken a new dig at Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. The US president's not happy over the UK's lack of support for America's strikes on Iran. Meanwhile, British warplanes and troops have shot down multiple drones in the Middle East. F-35 jets, the RAF's most expensive fighter aircraft, blasted drones out of the sky in Jordan. It's the first time the jets have struck a target on operations. And Donald Trump says the US Navy will escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, if necessary, a key oil shipping route. Concerns about soaring energy prices driving up the cost of living has resulted in tumbling global stocks. LBC weather: patchy clouds spreading north tonight with a few spots of drizzle. Cold in the north, lows between 0 and 10 degrees.
LBC.
At Amazon, over 50% of deliveries now come with less packaging or with no added packaging at all. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where you chat with friends, where your neighbour's daughter practices guitar, and where we deliver your new noise-cancelling headphones in the manufacturer's packaging. Ah, much better. Reduced packaging from Amazon. We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on 2025 Amazon packaging data across the UK and EU.
You know that feeling when your money is working for you? No? Well, make it! Open an investment account at XTB, make your first deposit, and receive a free Rolls-Royce stock.
Rolls-Royce?
That's right. Own one of the best performing UK stocks this year for free. And if you like it, you can easily buy more stocks and ETFs with 0% commission. Join XTB and let your money work for you.
Your capital is at risk. Investments above €100,000 are charged at 0.2% commission. FX fees may apply. Limited availability. T's and C's apply.
It took me less than 30 seconds to request my repeat prescription on the NHS app.
That's quicker than making this brew.
And I saved time by not ringing the GP practice.
Win.
Plus, with notifications turned on, I know as soon as I get a new message.
Big win.
So there's more time for this tea break.
So did you go to that restaurant? We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Request repeat prescriptions and turn on notifications to never miss a message. Tap the NHS app.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:36 on LBC. We have Dame Meg Hillier, Labour MP, Nadeem Zahawi, former Conservative MP, now Reform UK campaigner. Paul Novak is not an MP, but he's got a much more important position. He's General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress. And James Wilde, Conservative MP. Right, a WhatsApp question from Reese. Whatever you think about his actions in Iran, is Trump right to say that we should stop caring about climate change and start drilling for oil? Now, while speaking in the Oval Office earlier today, Trump said that if he was running this country, now there's a thought, he would open up the North Sea and stop buying energy from Norway. Meanwhile, GMB union boss Gary Smith said the war in Iran demonstrates it's absolutely vital that the UK has a secure domestic oil and gas supply. Paul, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I disentangle those two things. First of all, I think Donald Trump is absolutely wrong to say that we should abandon our sort of aspirations to meet net zero and to simply drill, baby, drill. I think Gary's got a really important point, actually. I think we should explore the potential for using naughty oil and gas as a substitute for oil and gas that we're importing. I think that's actually probably more about energy security than energy prices, because the UK energy prices are tied to global gas prices, partly because we got rid of our gas storage, so we're very exposed on international markets. But more broadly, and Gary's members will be involved in this as well, we need to invest in offshore renewables. We need to invest in the next generation of nuclear in the UK, because I think we want clean, secure, safe energy. So I'm up for anything that is about sort of holding down energy costs. I think one of the things that we've pressed the Chancellor on, that the government is intending to bring in additional support for energy-intensive employers next year. I think there's scope to bring that forward, particularly if this is a protracted conflict in the Middle East, because we already know that UK manufacturers are not competitive, not because we're not productive or because we haven't got the skills or we haven't invested in the right kit, because of energy prices. So we've got to bear down on energy prices for manufacturers and for industry more generally.
Nadine?
So if you look at where we need to be in terms of energy generation over the next 10 years, the world will need to produce as much energy in 10 years' time as we produce today in Europe, the US, and Japan. Why? Because AI and data centers and the technological leap that's about to take place, and I wouldn't want the United Kingdom to be left behind. Coupled with that, and I'm going to agree with Paul here, we're importing LNG from Qatar. How is that helping the net zero or the climate change discussion by bringing gas across from Qatar here, whereas we've got our own natural resources? Aberdeen has been decimated by the policies of net zero. And I have to say again, I'm glad to see Kemi Badenoch changing her mind on that. But I would say we have to look at our own resources, gas and oil, as part of that strategy. Base load is necessary. You still need it. It's not good enough to say that well, we've got enough renewables, because we don't. Nuclear is late and it's expensive in the UK, sadly. Unless we do something about that cost base, you're not going to deliver enough energy for the United Kingdom's security. So, yeah, I absolutely think we should look at the North Sea.
James?
I mean, it's an odd question. It's pure common sense that we should maximise our homegrown resources, oil and gas, which we're going to need for decades to come. Tens of thousands of jobs, not just in Scotland and Aberdeen, but across the whole country in the supply chain, including in my area, are dependent on that exploitation of the North Sea. And as Nadeem said, actually, the carbon footprint of that oil and gas is going to be lower than importing it from Qatar. Unfortunately, in Ed Miliband, we've got a green zealot who wants to drive away from the North Sea. And through the punitive taxation that the Chancellor's put in place, she's driving away people who want to invest into the North Sea. I think that is self-defeating. I think Kemi Badenoch was right to call out that there isn't a proper plan for net zero. We need to be sensible. We need to put our own energy security first and foremost. I think if the war in Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East has shown us anything, it's that we should be maximising that natural resource for the benefit of our country.
Does Kemi Badenoch even believe in net zero?
Well, she believes in having a plan to actually achieve it and not achieving something by an arbitrary deadline. That's what she's set out, and we'll be developing our policies further as we get towards an election. But we've been very clear we're not going to make people poorer on the backs of going for an arbitrary deadline.
That's quite ironic, because when I chaired the Public Accounts Committee and we looked at the then government's plan for net zero, so that was the Conservative government, we concluded they were not going to reach it. So there was a plan and they weren't going to bid to deliver on it. So
exactly, and she's been honest about that. So we're on that committee together, Meg.
Yes,
so
indeed,
I think so. She's realised that there wasn't a plan that was going to be delivered. So she's been honest about it and said there isn't a plan. Isn't that the right thing to do?
Well, except we've now got, of course, a Secretary of State for Energy who is very committed to
this. Making us poorer.
But no, but actually, who would have predicted? I think even 15 years ago that the strike price, the cost of wind energy, is as cheap as it is. This is how we're going to get resilience long term.
Well, he just paid a lot more at the most recent auction.
Well, because
the price has gone up.
Only because one of those was innovative.
Locking it in for 25 years.
One of those was innovative new technology, and you sometimes have to have that new technology developed somewhere. So that was one part of the auction. But the previous auction was uncovered. We're getting into technical stuff here, which might lose a lot of people.
He's paid more.
But the previous auction under the Conservative government had been one that no one had bid for. So I think it's really important we are getting that.
So that's an excuse to pay more.
Let's be clear.
Hang on. Three of you are talking. I said I would intervene if... now 4 of you are talking. We're not having that. We're not having 4 people talking over each other. Meg.
Thank you, Ian. So there was one part of that auction that was covered well, and then part of it was more expensive because it was new technology that needs to be tested so that the next time round it will be rolled out hopefully cheaper. But we need that. This is resilient. This is giving us resilience in the long term. But in the short term, there is a challenge. Well, if this war in the Middle East continues for a long time, there is going to be a real challenge about how we have that energy security. So I think nothing's off the table, I would say, or shouldn't be at this point in order to get us over that hump until we have enough offshore wind and onshore wind. And let's not forget, it was the Conservative Party that banned onshore wind, so they have put us behind in the plan to deliver green energy, which is secure and build energy security.
Surely it is sensible if we have oil.
I'm just saying nothing should be off the table. Yeah, absolutely.
No, but the government isn't saying that, are they? They're saying that they don't want to exploit any more oil and gas reserves in the North Sea, which to the ordinary person in the street sounds mad.
What I'm saying is that if we don't know how long the situation in the Middle East is going to go on for, and if it is, God help us, prolonged, we all hope that does not happen, then any responsible government will have to look at all the options, because the cost to because remember, at the moment, domestic consumers are protected because of the price cap. Businesses will be the ones that are hit, and as Paul has highlighted, and I think we've got to think about all of those things around. But we need to be pushing faster and further on green energy, because that is not just good for our planet, and there is no planet B, but it's also actually giving us long-term security, because we have a windy country, let's be clear.
Right. Briefly from Paul and then from Nadine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is an either or. I mean, we know that oil and gas.
The government seems to.
No, I don't think they do, Ian, actually, because there's still an active oil and gas industry in the North Sea. The government has talked about close expansion where there's already wells, but I think it is absolutely right, as I've just said before, that we look at the potential of replacing imported oil and gas with oil and gas from the North Sea. Absolutely right to look at that and have that option.
But Ed Miliband isn't
on the table. But it is also important that we invest in renewables and new nuclear. Now, I'm old enough to remember when Boris Johnson was our Prime Minister, alongside fixing social care and 80 new hospitals, he was talking about building 8 nuclear power stations, and nothing happened at all. And Ed Miliband, we can talk, you can bandy around the Green Zealot and all the rest of it, has actually got a plan to build new nuclear in this country, not just large-scale nuclear, things like SMRs, which could be really important, supporting good quality jobs in the Midlands and across the rest of the country. So I think we need to think about oil and gas, supporting workers in oil and gas, absolutely. Okay. But in the future, we are also going to have to invest in net zero, and we're going to have to invest in clean energy, and I think the government is doing that.
Nadine.
Empty words. Between Meg and
Paul.
We
represent empty words. People working in energy,
Meg,
and we're fighting for their jobs every day.
I thought you're clever enough to think about. You just conflated what is happening in the Middle East today, right? Oh, if what happens continues, we'll have to look at the North Sea. Do you know how long it takes to actually begin to explore and extract gas from the North Sea? People listening to this programme will think we're led by people who have no idea how the real world works. But that's what you just said. I'm just repeating your words for you. You said that depending on what happens in the Middle East, maybe we should look at new licences in the North Sea. There are no new licences in the North Sea because we are deliberately effectively knocking ourselves out from our own treasure.
Let's be clear. We shouldn't be making policy up on the hoof at this point. So at the dispatch
you
box,
just did.
No, I'm saying that we don't know how long this situation is going to go on for, and we've got.
So if it's prolonged, maybe then we'll look at the North Sea.
Well,
that's what you said.
But even out with this situation, we know
that is what you said.
We need to make, and I just have to say, it's really ripe on the nuclear situation. It was under the coalition that the decisions were delayed on building. I went down to Wilfer in Wales to see the site that a new nuclear power station was going to be built on. It still hasn't had a sod turned on it. And this is now 16, 17 years later, something like that. And that was because under a Conservative and coalition governments, those two governments, nothing was done.
Well, that's
right. No. We need to move on because otherwise we're not going to.
That's not true. But Wilfer didn't get.
It's not true. We're not going to get any questions on the spring statement in if we continue with this. So let's go to a break. It's 8:47, and everyone can calm down.
This is LBC.
Calling all young creatives. It's time to get prepped for the journalism industry. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Molly, a journalism student in Year 12.
Outside of the classroom, we run our own news platform called The Loop. I do a daily news bulletin and produce videos for socials. We learn everything we need to be a journalist and have even learned alongside the news team at Global.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in Years 10 or 12. globalacademy.com.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Turn ordinary into the extraordinary every day with the Lexus LBX. Whilst most SUVs are big and brash, the LBX is quietly bold and confident. Refined luxury crafted into a compact SUV. The Lexus LBX. What car's best small SUV 2024 and 2025?
Chase is the digital bank that boosts your savings to 4.5% AER variable.
A boost?
Yep. It includes a 2.25% AER boost for the first 12 months.
Are they being boosted now?
All the time. Bedtime, gym time, romantic dinner time. And soon you could boost your way to...
beach time.
Boost your savings with Chase. Search Chase Boosted Saver. 18 plus UK residents. Available to new Chase current account customers for their first 31 days. 4.41% gross interest paid monthly. Eligibility and T's and C's apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:49. Dame Meg Hillier, Nadeem Zahawi, Paul Novak and James Wilde with us answering your questions. Andrew in Fulham says, today the Chancellor said she has stabilised the economy and has the right plan for our country. With unemployment and welfare costs rising, growth forecasts for the year recently downgraded and inflation still higher than when Labour came to power, is the panel in agreement with the Chancellor's assessment? And do any of the panel feel that cost of living pressures are actually easing for working people? What are your constituents telling you, James?
I was quite surprised that the Chancellor said her plan was working today, to put it politely. If you said that to people in northwest Norfolk, they certainly wouldn't agree. We've seen growth downgraded again. It's already been basically flat because of her tax rises. If you look at inflation, it's 50% higher than the government inherited. It is coming down, but it's coming down from a level they've put it up to. And the biggest concern in my constituency is unemployment, which is at a record 5-year high, and particularly youth unemployment. And young people are really struggling to get that first job. We see in hospitality, jobs have been decimated because of the jobs tax. People can't afford to take on young people and give them that first-time or part-time job. And then that's been exacerbated by the doubling of business rates. The government's done a U-turn and helped some pubs, but that doesn't help restaurants, hotels, all of the other retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. And the Chancellor had an opportunity today to do something to help people with the cost of living, and she just said everything's fine.
Paul?
Well, I wouldn't claim that we're living in a land of milk and honey by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Andrew's been slightly selective in the facts that he's chose there. I mean, actually, growth forecasts over the Parliament are actually up. Living standards are forecast to rise. Borrowing costs are down. Those cost of living pressures are still very real. The government has done things on energy prices, on holding down rail fares. I think there's more the government needs to do, and it needs to stay the course, for example, on things like the minimum wage, delivering it to gender to make work pay, because that's crucial. 70% of the kids who live in poverty in this country have at least one parent who goes out to work. And I think the government is doing something serious about unemployment. Youth unemployment is a real worry. It has been rising since 21-22. And there's structural issues for that. But I think things like a youth jobs guarantee, and hopefully something we can all agree on across the panel, things like apprenticeships, fixing a broken apprenticeship system. Barely half of the people who start apprenticeships complete an apprenticeship. That's a complete waste of taxpayers' money. It's a complete disincentive for young people who are excited and starting out and going into work and then finding that they don't complete courses, and it's bad for employers. So I think there are serious, sensible things the government can do, but I do think that long-term investment is going to pay off, and that people hopefully will start to feel it in the pocket. Far too many people aren't feeling it in the pockets at the moment. I think that's absolutely the case, but I think the Chancellor's taken us in the right direction.
Nadeem, as a former Chancellor.
I'm deeply worried on several fronts. One, youth unemployment. We're heading towards 1.9 million people unemployed. 1% growth is anemic. We used to talk about 2 to 2.5%. The US is looking at growing at 4+%. So when people say, well, we're a developed economy, we can't grow the same rates as some of the emerging economies, look at the developed economy of the US. That's powering ahead. All of that, plus, of course, the government getting caught out on energy costs and prices, where Keir Starmer said they've come down. They haven't come down. They've actually gone up. The cost of living is very real. And effectively the NI increase. Today, the OBR said that the national insurance increase that Rachel Reeves introduced is a direct consequence to the increase in unemployment, or the consequence of higher unemployment is the NI increase. That is, in my view, problematic. I think the government will have to, at some point, do a U-turn. I don't know whether it's the 16th or 17th U-turn on this, because in a very short period of time, in the next 18, 24 months, you're going to see even greater pressure on employment, especially youth employment, because of the AI revolution. So all of this, Rachel Reeves has not really considered, and I think it will come back to really hurt this government.
Meg?
Well, I mean, Nadine was part of a government when Liz Truss was.
Well, can we just stick
Can you stop talking about it? Why don't we just talk about your record?
You don't want to remember.
Today.
You don't want to remember. But look, I mean, unemployment.
Deal with the issues today, Meg. You're in a terrible situation.
I've already asked her to do that.
Well, unemployment has gone up a bit, and one of the reasons for that is that some of the people who are economically inactive, who chose not to work but didn't claim unemployment, weren't looking for work, have now come back into the workforce. Some of them have got jobs, so actually employment has gone up, but some of them are now looking for work. And that will even out. And it is challenging for young people. And I agree completely with Paul. There is a systemic issue here that we need to be looking at. And my committee will be asking questions of the Chancellor about this next week. And I know she's very passionate about it. So you've got the Youth Guarantee, which gives anyone under 25 who's been on universal credit for 6 months an opportunity to work and work experience. There's the Middleburn Review that's tackling those young people who are not in education, employment or training. And we do need to reform apprenticeships. When I looked at this under the last government, and it hasn't massively improved yet, that there are plans to change it, a lot of those apprenticeships were going to people doing MBAs. And there's nothing wrong with people doing further and higher education, but employers were using that money to boost people already in the workplace who may well have funded it in other ways, rather than helping those younger people getting those skills and training that they desperately needed. So we need to really look at apprenticeships again.
Let's bring in a follow-up question here from Joseph, who says, I'd like to ask the panel what ideas or suggestions they would have for the government of today to improve UK productivity. Literally sort of 45 seconds a minute each, please. Paul.
Invest in skills and fix our broken skills system. UK employers spend about half the EU average on education and training. I think that partly because they've got they took their eye off the ball and they're not thinking long term. And I think it's time to invest in young people and fix the relationship with the European Union. It's our largest trading partner. That bad Brexit deal, doesn't matter whether you voted Leave or Remain, it's a bad Brexit deal. And everything from the prices in supermarkets to productivity, UK supply chains, a better deal with Europe would help.
Nadine.
Invest. If you incentivize employers to be ambitious about employing people, what we've done is the opposite. The Jobs Destruction Bill, or Act now, is disincentivizing employers, small, medium or large, from taking on people. I would agree with Paul. When I first job in government was as the apprenticeship czar, and we introduced the apprenticeship levy. I think we need to look at how that's being used and how do you get employers to upskill and reskill and create a workforce that is able to effectively be much more dynamic and able to move as technology begins to change. And there's a massive change coming ahead of us.
Meg?
Well, as well as having support for skills and training in things like RFE colleges, I think employers need to be supported to incentivise upskilling people so that they are working as productively as possible. And but also, I think IT is going to play, or tech is going to play a part in this. I represent Shoreditch, with lots of tech businesses, and they're doing some very innovative things. We're going to make sure that that's being well used so that it's actually creating jobs that can be more productive rather than reducing jobs that people can have.
Shoreditch is the hippest part of London, isn't it?
Well, it's also achingly cool, but achingly poor. 1 in 2 children in my constituencies live in poverty, though there'll be fewer than that after April, thanks to a Labour government.
Well, I'm glad it's fewer rather than less. Well done. Brownie points for that. James?
We need to give businesses the confidence to invest. Confidence in the economy amongst businesses is very low. We see that in all of the surveys. We took measures in the last government to introduce things like full expensing to encourage more investment. We can look at broadening the scope of that. But we also need to deregulate the economy, get the pettifogging rules off the back of business so that they can actually get on, grow, invest, export, and unleash the animal instincts. And
you had 14 years to do that.
Yeah, no. When I was in the Department for Business with Michael Fallon, we did a lot on the deregulation agenda. But it's a constant battle that you have to fight because other parts of Whitehall constantly want to impose those rules. We've seen more regulators come with this government. We're regulating football.
Didn't you test that model of low regulation economy to destruction during 14 years?
What happened?
Well, I'll tell you what happened to our members. Living standards didn't improve and wages stagnated.
Over the last decade, they're going to improve more than they are over the next 5 years of this Parliament.
Yeah,
that's what the ABR
the decimation of public services and the UK economy that was flat on its back.
We put more money into public services, more money into the NHS.
Shall we hear what the questioner Joseph says? It says a completely predictable response from the panel who show no vision or real understanding of what exactly is causing UK productivity to fail. The real reason UK productivity is failing is bad management. The investment needs to be in better quality and more visionary management, in how management take risks that can be calculated and assessed, and maybe AI is the answer. I suspect actually many of you might agree with a lot of that.
Yep.
Even Unity.
Talk about skilling people.
I talked about investment and incentivising employers to upskill and reskill and actually prepare for the AI revolution. I think I've got to tell you, the real risk is what I see around the world is people announce these incredible investments in data centres. Lots of countries have already begun to build. They're going to be delivering their data centres, and I suspect we'll still be going through another planning review.
Right. Emmy in Chester has our fun question. The stars of the new film version of Peaky Blinders, never seen it, gathered for the premiere last night. So many people love the Peaky Blinders look of 1920s fashion and flat caps. But which TV show characters do you most love dressing up as? This could go very wrong, couldn't it? James, let's start with you.
I hadn't thought about this before, and I don't really dress up in
only on Saturday nights.
But I would go for. So I was in Nashville last summer. Big fan of country music, so I'd probably go for the Dukes of Hazzard. Get the check shirt and the denim out.
I thought you were going to say Daisy Dukes then.
Meg.
Well, like James, I'm not a big dresser-upper, but I do sometimes whip out my sewing machine to help my daughter, who, whether it's been World Book Day or as she's grown older, but she went to the Taylor Swift concert, I have to say, bought the tickets herself, and I think I helped out a bit.
Unlike here.
And it was during the election campaign, but I was allowed a night off by my agent to whip her up a glittery pink outfit with sequins, and so whatever my daughter wants, I will make, but I'm not going to wear it myself.
I think the world will pay to see you as Taylor Swift. Nadine.
Well, look, the easy one would be to say Kojak. And Telly Savalas.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, no one under the age of 60 is going to know what you're talking about.
Precisely. So I'm not a dresser-up, but I can tell you that my favourite programme is Slow Horses. And I have to say, Jackson Lamb, Gary Oldman, is a genius. And if I have to do a fancy dress, I think Paul had a go at me for being too bling. Maybe I can go the other way and be totally grungy.
Right, the country awaits your answer, Paul.
Well, listen, I'm 53 years of age, and there are some red lines that I've never crossed the picket line. I've never cheered on Liverpool Football Club, and I've never done fancy dress in my life at all. So I have got no ideas at all. Although I was at that Taylor Swift concert last year in Wembley, it was absolutely fantastic.
And you paid for your ticket?
I did pay for my ticket, and I met Taylor Swift's mum, but that's another story.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Don't tell my now. I hope my daughter's not listening to this.
Right. I'm going to pick J.R. Ewing, which also dates me. Right. Thank you all very much indeed. On tomorrow's panel, we have the filmmaker and a Newsnight deputy editor, Neil Breakwell, MPs, David Pinto-Duchinsky from Labour and Sarah Bull from the Conservatives, plus one of the LBC alumni, the broadcaster, James Max. Right, coming up in the next hour, it's another edition of Ask the Correspondents. Aggie Chambray, our deputy political editor, is going to join me in the studio. Simon Marks is beaming in live from Washington, D.C., because given the events of this afternoon and what Donald Trump has said and what Keir Starmer has said, we talked in the 7 o'clock hour about the future or possible lack lack of one of the special relationship. So they're going to be here to take your questions. So it's Ask the Correspondents coming up next on LBC. The number to call 0345 6060 973. You can text your questions to that number, or no, actually you can WhatsApp your questions to that number, or text 84850.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Donald Trump's taken a new dig at Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. The US president says he's not happy over the UK's lack of support for America's strikes on Iran, and in particular over the time the Prime Minister took to grant the US limited access to Diego Garcia Air Base.
This is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have, that they gave away and took a 100-year lease, having to do with perhaps indigenous people claiming the island.
Meanwhile, the US president says the US Navy could start escorting tankers in the region to ensure the flow of oil and gas. There are concerns about soaring global energy prices. Well, the US Secretary of State has been speaking within the last hour and says a drone's hit a car park next to the US consulate in Dubai. No injuries have been reported and all staff have been accounted for. Marco Rubio also again said the military action will intensify.
We're going to unleash Cheng on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as, frankly, the two most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbours.
The UK will send helicopters with counter-drone capabilities and air defend destroyer HMS Dragon to Cyprus after attacks on British bases there. France is also planning to send a frigate and further air defences to the island. The MOD also says F-35 jets, the RAF's most expensive fighter aircraft, have blasted drones out of the sky in Jordan as part of defensive operations. In other news this evening, the Tories say the Chancellor's plan is not working following her spring statement earlier, as the budget watchdog downgrades this year's growth forecast. Rachel Reeves says she does have the right economic plan and restored stability in an uncertain world. The OBR forecast was finalised before the Middle East conflict broke out. And England have got off to a winning start in their qualifying campaign for next year's Women's World Cup. They've thrashed Ukraine 6-1. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down nearly 3% to 10,427. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, patchy clouds spreading north tonight with a few spots of drizzle. Cold in the north, lows between 0 and 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
9 on LBC. Now, this hour, I think, is going to be an oasis of calm compared to the last hour, because we have two professionals with us, Simon Marks and Aggie Chambray. Aggie is our deputy political editor. Simon is our Washington. Now, do we say Washington correspondent, don't we, Simon? That's your correct title. And they would never dream of talking over each other, would you, Aggie?
I wouldn't dare.
No, quite. Well, this is an hour that we call the correspondence. We do this occasionally when there's a big news story. It's often to do with what's going on in America, but also here. And of course, today, Donald Trump has made his, I think, quite incendiary remarks, very insulting remarks to Britain and its Prime Minister. And Aggie, you're going to take us through what he's actually said.
I am indeed, Ian, because it's been an absolutely extraordinary, seems to genuinely understate it, but it has been an extraordinary day. And Donald Trump yesterday told The Telegraph he was very disappointed in Sir Keir Starmer, for blocking him from using Diego Garcia, that, of course, in the Chagos Islands, to carry out strikes on Iran. And today he went so much further. So we're about to hear a clip of him referring to Diego Garcia, and that is where he wasn't allowed to use the British-controlled airbase initially. But first, Donald Trump, in this clip, turned his anger towards the Spanish government.
Some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases. And that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it. But we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him that we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people. But they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made, for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
And a few minutes later, Donald Trump decided he actually wasn't done criticising the Prime Minister.
This is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have, that they gave away and took a 100-year lease, having to do with perhaps indigenous people claiming the island that never even saw the island before. What's that all about? And they ruin relationships. It's a shame. It's and that country, UK, and I love that country. I love it. My mother was born there. I love it. My mother was born there. My father was born. Right? He knows all about my father. My father was born there. So very places that you sort of automatically very feel warmly about. But the UK, what they're doing with energy and what they're doing with immigration is horrible. You have the North Sea. Somebody said yesterday, what would you do if you were the UK? Open up the North Sea. They got windmills all over the place that are ruining the country, ruining the landscapes, ruining the beautiful fields. Open up the North Sea. It's one of the greatest. Think of it. They buy their energy from Norway, which gets the energy, the oil, from the North Sea. So Norway drills in the North Sea and sells it to UK. And UK has a better part of the North Sea. Open up that. And number 2, illegal immigration. They got to solve that problem. And I must say, that's not only UK, that's other parts of the European Union.
And in response to what Donald Trump has said this evening, Downing Street has highlighted the comments which Sir Keir Starmer made in the Commons yesterday.
President Trump has expressed his disagreement with our decision not to get involved in the initial strikes. But it is my duty to judge what is in Britain's national interest. That is what I've done, and I stand by it.
Simon Marks, I mean, what a day. I mean, just give us briefly your analysis of what the implications of what Donald Trump has said today for the relations between the United States and Britain. I mean, he didn't go quite as far as he did with Spain with us, but it wasn't far off.
Well, it's the final nail in the coffin of any notion, not only that there's a special relationship between the United States and the UK, but also the notion, as promulgated relentlessly by the British Embassy here in Washington, D.C., that the two countries are #stronger together. I mean, this is Donald Trump on a trajectory. And you and I talked about this, I think, on Ask the Correspondents at the time. On September the 19th of last year, the minute that Donald Trump's second state visit to the UK was in his rear view mirror, he'd got the picture with the King, he'd hung out with the Prince and Princess of Wales, that was the end of his working relationship with the Prime Minister. And underscoring that, at the end of last year, came the publication of America's new official national security strategy, which says that the UK and Europe are facing civilizational erasure because of the influx of mostly Muslim immigrants and those other issues, of course, that President Trump raised, and that the only optimism that the United States finds in Europe is the rise of what the national security strategy signed off by Donald Trump refers to as patriotic political parties. And those are not the Labour Party or the Conservative Party or the Lib Dems. Those, in the UK context, that means Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And the fact that President Trump has given interviews in the last 36 hours to The Telegraph, to Harry Cole at The Sun, there is no question that this is all part of a trajectory that he is on of moving away from Keir Starmer and the new British ambassador here, Christian Turner, who's in only his second full week on the job, having replaced the disgraced Lord Mandelson. They are not Donald Trump's kind of people. And that it's taken this long for Number 10 to understand that the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President is basically in the tank it's a belated realisation of reality here.
Right, we've got loads of calls coming in. 0345 6060 973. Let's go to Rose in Tavistock. Hello, Rose.
Hello, Ian. Shall I give my question?
Please do.
Yes, it's a bit of an introduction. Well, I would say Trump's a bit upset, isn't he? I'm disappointed, he says, in us and Spain.
Ever the mistress of understatement, Rose, if I may say so.
Well, I mean, why do we have to take any notice of it? He can't even construct a sentence. I just feel that people like him, obsessed with their own power, violating boundaries, this is what this is all about, all the time with him, everywhere he goes. It's for our PM to make his decisions as leader of a separate country. And I just hope you can tell me, Simon, that I'm wrong. But I think, given Trump's commitment to installing extreme right-wing ideologues in power here and in Europe, as if he, this is okay, I think I'll change the power structure in that country. What? Plus the obedience demanded from Spain and from us, and this spreading of violence, he's just precipitated, all the thing that's going on there and the incursions and in other countries and the suggested incursion into Greenland. It looks to me, oh yes, and the wish to change our energy policies, our immigration has nothing whatsoever to do with him. Is this all a march towards a unilateral megalomaniac power, I can't say it, metastasizing further and further?
That's a good
because
point.
I think it is, and I want you to tell me I'm wrong.
I thought you were going to say, and another thing there, Rose, at one stage. Simon, what's your answer to the lovely Rose?
Well, Rose, I would love to be able to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not sure you're entirely wrong. I think you're mostly right. I think that there is a reality here that Donald Trump certainly doesn't respect the sovereignty of other countries. When he says jump, he expects the Prime Minister to say how high, and also that the Prime Minister faced, I think, a real conundrum over the course of the last 4 or 5 days, especially given the still shifting explanations that the White House and the Secretary of State are engaged in over precisely why this war began. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, within the last hour, has walked back entirely the claim that he made only 24 hours ago, that it was Israel that was going to attack Iran first, and the United States couldn't stop them from doing it, so the United States thought they better get in on that, because otherwise they were worried that US troops were going to come under reprisals following an Israeli attack on Iran. But President Trump at the White House today said, no, that's not what happened. We thought Iran was going to strike first. So suddenly Marco Rubio is accusing reporters of getting getting it wrong, even though one of them bravely read back to him the verbatim of what he had said yesterday. How any European government is supposed to respond when this government can't get its own story straight here in the United States about the reason for the attack, the purpose of the military action, what the objectives are. Those are still shifting. Suddenly regime change was back on the table today as far as the president's concerned, but not as far as Marco Rubio is concerned this afternoon. Makes life extraordinarily difficult for British policymakers, but also incredibly hazardous for the brave British men and women who are going into battle to assist in this effort to do whatever it is that Donald Trump is trying to do in Iran. And we know that President Trump has, within recent weeks, denigrated the service of members of the British Armed Forces in an absolutely disgraceful way. All of this goes to show that the bilateral relationship is dispensable to him, and tonight he's largely dispensed with it.
Are you happy with that answer, Rose?
Well, I'm always happy with everything Simon says. I just think his use of language and his
get a room
percipience is brilliant. I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
like so many women. I mean, Aggie, do you have sympathy with Rose's position there? She's not going to answer
Plead
that.
the fifth.
18 minutes past 9.
LBC.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working, offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year, mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
We asked patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital what makes someone special.
They can make me laugh lots and lots and lots and lots. They have to write arts and crafts. Their favourite food is chocolate cake.
They might be a magician, so they can magically make me better.
They will be kind.
Does that sound like you? Be someone special and leave a gift in your will to Gosh Charity. Search Gosh Legacy for your Gifts in Wills guide.
Thank you.
1983 election, she's won a landslide second term.
Police have been deployed to disperse crowds as the poll tax riots escalate.
Credit crunch is continuing to spread from the USA.
Britain has left the European Union. I mean, the list goes on. Boris, Liz,
We've
Rishi.
helped Britain invest through 45 years of change. That's why we're the UK's #1 investment and savings platform, trusted by 2 million people. Hargreaves Lansdown, helping Britain invest for it all. Investment returns vary. For claim verification, visit hl.co.uk.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
20 past 9, it's Call the Correspondents. Aggie Chambray and Simon Marks are with me taking your calls. Lots and lots of them coming in, it has to be. So there's so much interest in what's going on in Iran at the moment. And, of course, Donald Trump's remarks today. Let's go to Jerry in St Albans. Hello, Jerry.
Oh, hi, Ian. Good evening. Hi. Very exciting, isn't it? Well, the point I'd like to say is, basically, I feel that with the remarks that Donald Trump said today towards the UK was basically unacceptable. It's like he's bullying us to take part. And I don't know whether or not I read the news correctly about 5 minutes ago, that the UK had actually made some strikes. Apparently it was. I've literally.
We've apparently shot down drones.
Yeah.
Over Jordan.
Right. Okay. But should we be getting involved?
Well,
really, it's not our problem. I mean, they could have done that regime somewhere else. What about Sudan? They need freedom, don't they? Isn't that what Donald Trump was talking about? I mean, I don't know what's going on anyway. Nobody does. 1 minute it's freedom, the next minute it's something else. Where are the facts? facts and evidence.
Well, I'm about to get the facts on shooting down these drones in Jordan, because that's the first I've heard of that. But I mean, I think it is absolutely legitimate to shoot down drones that are about to attack either. I mean, those drones, they may have been on their way to Akrotiri in Cyprus, our base there. And if so, then I can't think anyone would have any argument about shooting them down.
That's it. I know, but was it for? Were they heading to Cyprus?
Well, I don't know. It's the first I've heard of it. What you've just said, Chris has just told me that it was shooting down drones over Jordan. I don't know where they were going, but I would also suggest that Jordan is an ally of the United Kingdom, and if we could help the Jordanians repel Iraqi attacks, great. Aggie.
So what Keir Starmer has said in the last 48 hours, is drawn a very clear, in their heads, clear distinction between defensive and offensive action. They believe that getting involved with defensive action, and when I say getting involved with defensive action, it is deploying, for example, what happened today, HMS Dragon to Cyprus. It's sending helicopters with counter-drone capabilities deployed to the region as well, and it is allowing the US access to UK facilities to send strikes from there. But they are very, very clear on allowing the US access to that is for very specific purposes. It's only to 2 bases, and it is basically to get rid of Iran's capabilities and to help what they say would hasten the end of the war, because they believe that is very much within international law. They say that Iran's reaction after those initial strikes on Saturday meant that they felt that things had changed, and it became then in keeping with international law for them to get involved defensively rather than offensively. So that is very much the argument that they have got. The reason I think that they have talked about the fact that Keir Starmer said he doesn't want to get involved, or didn't want to get involved initially, and still doesn't want to get involved in terms of offensive action, is talking about those 2 lessons that were learned from the Iraq War. Number 1, that legality point that I was just talking about, and number 2, a clear plan. From what he was saying when he was speaking to MPs yesterday, it didn't seem that he felt that Donald Trump does have a clear plan in how this is going to end, and that is the reason the UK has not wanted to get involved, at least so far. When you ask, will the UK get involved further down the line, obviously their position has changed. Of course it has changed, because they were not getting involved at all. We were not getting involved at all, and now we are more involved, although again, to stress that difference between offensive and defensive, as they have done so many times. So we don't know what is going to happen, but at the moment they are very much holding firm, and they are very much holding firm when we have had seen a great amount of criticism coming from Donald Trump, including that language about him not being anything like Winston Churchill. And I don't think that we should play down what a big deal it is that Keir Starmer not only is being more openly critical of Donald Trump, who he was so keen to see as an ally, but secondly, the fact that the UK has said no to America in terms of diverging on military action. I mean, ministers today were pointing to the fact that this is the first time since actually the Vietnam War that a British Prime Minister has officially refused to commit to a major American military intervention. And, so we're talking many, many, many years. Of course, there was the Syria strikes, but that minister is very much drawing a distinction between those events.
OK, we have some more on this this shooting down of a drone over Jordan. Now, a British F-35B fighter has shot down a number of drones over Jordan, which is the first time that this particular very modern aircraft has destroyed a target during operations. It's not clear exactly how many drones were destroyed or where they were heading to. We only know the drones were over Jordanian airspace at the time. The Ministry of Defence has added, and this is a quote, that a British counter-drone unit neutralised drones in Iraqi airspace heading towards coalition forces, whilst an RAF Typhoon operating with the joint UK-Qatar 12 squadron shot down an Iranian one-way attack drone directed at Qatar using an air-to-air missile on Monday. So that would have been, I mean, Simon, I don't know how much you know about sort of operational matters here, but that would have been a request from either the Jordanian government or the Qatar government for Britain to shoot down these drones. I imagine that's how it would have played out.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, Ian, and reflective of the fact that the UK wants to play some kind of role. But just to get back to Jerry's question and the sort of the confusion that she was expressing about what this is all about, she is perfectly justified to express that confusion. There is no plan. There is no identifiable plan for the day after. The Trump administration cannot keep its story straight for one news cycle about why this military action got underway and what it envisages coming out of this. Who do they favour, for example, to form a new government in Iran? President Trump was talking today about it needs to be someone who is popular in the country and who is already there. He kind of ruled out the idea that it could be the Shah's son, but then he went on to say he didn't know if anybody like that actually existed. I mean, to engage in this kind of military action that is putting British lives on the line, and then to be criticising the British Prime Minister so publicly while the German Chancellor was sitting alongside him there in the Oval Office, to be going after the Spanish because they don't agree with the manner in which this military operation has been unleashed by the United States and the Israelis, leaves everybody operating at President Trump's personal whim. And it raises huge questions, surely, about what is supposed to be the visit to the United States within the next few weeks of the King and the Queen to come and flatter Donald Trump and participate in the beginning of celebrations of America's 250th birthday. Are we really going to go ahead with that now, after the man who, and I steal this from LBC listeners today in my own social media timeline, who definitely is no FDR, was sitting there in the Oval Office today grousing that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill?
Imran says, Dale, you always know it's going to be a sort of smart-ass question when somebody starts with Dale. Is it legitimate to bomb a school? Imran, no, of course it's not legitimate to bomb a school. Nobody would do that intentionally. The school was next to an army barracks, which was a legitimate target for the Israelis and American fighters, and the bomb clearly went astray. But you knew that before you sent in the question, didn't you? Right, Billy is in Ventnor. Hello, Billy.
Hello, good evening, Ian, and good evening to Aggie, and good afternoon, I believe it is, to Simon. I've got a question regarding... I'm glad I got that right. Hopefully brownie points for that. I've got a question regarding the conflicts going on since Trump's second presidency, and I'd like to know, of course, from everybody, but in particular as well, Simon Marks, as you're the expert on this one, whether or not you think that these conflicts in practice make a third term possible in everything but name.
Well, he's now committed more military intervention during the first year of his second term in office than was conducted during President Joe Biden's entire time in the Oval Office. And he's done so in a way that raises huge questions about that national security strategy that I was talking about, because it defined America's sphere of influence as being the Western Hemisphere. So Venezuela, you could kind of argue, fell within that strategy. His interests in possibly a friendly takeover of Cuba, sure, you could argue that that falls into the Western Hemisphere. But America First supporters here, and the president's Make America Great Again loyalists, are furious about the way in which the president has completely U-turned on his promise not to entangle American service personnel in potentially forever wars, but certainly in potential quagmires in far-off lands about which they know little and care even less. So if Donald Trump is really coveting the possibility of a third term, and he spoke about that again just a few days ago, he keeps flirting with the idea publicly in a kind of jokey-pokey way, but it's not really a joke to him. He's got bigger fish to fry immediately, which come in the form of the midterm elections this November. You know, CNN has a poll out today. 60% of Americans disapprove of his decision to take military action in Iran. And if you look at what Make America Great Again influencers are saying, storied names within Donald Trump's firmament, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, even on the ultra-white supremacist far right, Nick Fuentes, they are all selling their shares in Donald Trump rapidly. So if he really covets a third term, I mean, I don't know how you get there from this position where he has so burned the people who believed him when he said that he was going to disentangle America from foreign wars rather than start new ones.
Right, thank you very much for that, Simon. Billy, thank you for your question. We've got lots of questions to get through in the next half an hour, so I'm going to ask both of my friends here to be sort of reasonably brief in their answers, and we can get through as many calls as we can. That was polite of me, wasn't it? 9:32 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines from Darryl Jackson.
Donald Trump's taken a new dig at Sir Keir Starmer, saying this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with. The US president says he's not happy over the time the Prime Minister took to grant the US limited access to the Diego Garcia Air Base. The UK will send helicopters with counter-drone capabilities and air defence destroyer HMS Dragon to Cyprus after attacks on a British base there. The MOD also says F-35 jets, the RAF's most expensive fighter aircraft, have blasted drones out of the sky in Jordan as part of defensive operations. Elsewhere today, the Tories say the Chancellor's plan is not working following her spring statement as a budget watchdog downgrades this year's growth forecast. Rachel Reeves says she does have the right economic plan and restored stability in an uncertain world. LBC weather, patchy clouds spreading north tonight with a few spots of drizzle. Cold in the north, lows between 0 and 10 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
Do you get giddy with all these U-turns?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
It's lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Train to Chichester. Flasks filled, snacks packed, all ready for Maisie's first stargazing adventure.
Come on, Maisie. Follow everyone up to the top of that hill.
Oh, look, that one's the plough.
Shooting star. Wow.
Made it. Last train back and feeling cosmic. And it seems we have an astronaut in the making. Download the Southern Railway app to book kids' tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story.
Thanks for the key deliverables, David. Now, who'd like to...
Stay out all night! Yahoo!
That's brilliant. So, OK, sales targets. Are we hitting it?
The dance floor! Anytime! Woohoo!
There's more than one you, and with Specsavers 2 for 1, you can choose glasses for at least 2 yous. From £70 with standard single vision lenses.
Nice moves, David!
Book an appointment at specsavers.co.uk. Conditions apply.
Tuesday night on the sofa, watching telly with Mum again.
Male hawkers stay with the mothers for life.
This is the moment Stephen chose to speak to Barclays about Mortgage Boost, so he could borrow more with help from family or friends. We're helping first-time buyers get on the property ladder sooner. Search Barclays Mortgages. Barclays, backing your future.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 9:35 here on LBC. We have Aggie Chambray and Simon Marks answering your questions. 0345 6060 973. Right, let's take this text question from Luke, who says, is the Chagos Island sale more important to us than our special relationship with the USA? Aggie?
No, I don't think it is. I think actually the Chagos Island sale is very much linked to our relationship with the USA. Part of the reason that we want to give away the Chagos Islands is because of this guidance from the ICJ giving it to Mauritius. But part of the reason for that is the protection of Diego Garcia, which is a British-controlled airbase, sort of joint-controlled airbase, which the US has access to as well. And the UK has said previously that actually securing that military base for the US and the UK, they felt was one of the key reasons that actually it was important to make this move. Of course, Chagos has become a lot more complicated since Donald Trump very much withdrew support of that, saying don't give away Diego Garcia, calling the deal tenuous, saying it was a big mistake, and actually I think he's called it stupid too in the last 12 hours or so. And now, well, it was said by a Foreign Office Minister last week that it was paused. They then denied that it had been paused. But at the moment, that legislation to finish off the Chagos deals has not been, there's not a date. It's not been scheduled to return to Parliament on that specific point. But I think the two are interlinked. I think the special relationship is fundamentally more important to the UK. I think it's hugely important to the UK. But at the moment, they have decided... Keir Starmer has decided that he wants to, or as he would say, prioritise law and also prioritise the British national interest, which is why he has chosen to not completely back Donald Trump on this issue.
Right, a question from Steve. He says, a question for Aggie. How long before we hear from the Trump supporting Reform UK, meaning they actually brief against the UK government in a time of war, will they come across as today's Lord Haw-Haw?
Well, Steve, we have heard from Reform UK. Nigel Farage did a press conference yesterday with his economic spokesperson, Robert Jenrick, where he did talk about Iran. And he's very, very much of the opinion that actually the UK should be going further to entirely support the US. I was actually at that press conference, and it wasn't entirely clear when Nigel Farage was talking about supporting the US, what exactly he meant. So I actually did ask at that press conference, and I think we have got the clip of that. I asked at the press conference whether he would support UK boots on the ground.
I think that would be a huge mistake. And I genuinely believe there has been a vast number of people living in Iran that have wanted to get rid of this regime. They came out in January and they were massacred. And we actually believe now possibly in their tens of thousands. This would be a great liberation. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that. But we couldn't put boots on the ground. We've barely got an army left. Even if we wanted to do it, we don't have the operational capacity to attempt anything on that scale that would be meaningful at all. But no, I don't want us to get dragged into it, but there's a heck of a lot we can do to help and support our allies in this.
He did, though, say it's the Royal Air Force, it's the Royal Navy, and it is intelligence too. Some of those things, of course, the British government is now doing, but again, drawing that distinction between offensive and defensive.
This is one thing I always love saying. Simon Marks has news.
Just a bit of news, Ian, an update that's coming from the White House pool. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has been talking to the German press here, and he's received a bit of heat over his own behaviour in the Oval Office. And this is an indication of what happens to foreign leaders when they come here for talks behind closed doors with President Trump and then get ambushed in the photo spray that precedes those conversations. He's been asked why he did not stand behind Spain and the UK publicly as they were both flayed by President Trump in that press conference. And the German Chancellor responded, "I did this behind closed doors because I did not want to conduct or escalate the conflict publicly." So he has indicated that he pushed back, particularly about Donald Trump's threats to Spain. He pointed out, he says to the president, that Spain is a member of the EU. So this idea that you're suddenly going to have a trade embargo on goods coming from Spain seems a little bit difficult to understand how it can be implemented. But his main point is much better to have a serious conversation with the President of the United States off camera and behind closed doors. And in that answer, I think, is a hint of the frustration that every foreign leader experiences when they arrive at the White House for serious policy discussions off camera with the President of the United States. And then before they can begin, those foreign leaders and the rest of us are all treated to the daily episode of The Trump Show.
Right, let's go to James in Barnes. James, good evening. What would you like to ask?
Hi, evening Ian, evening Simon. Simon, I'd like to ask you, as you know more than anybody probably about American politics, that the American Constitution was founded on checks and balances. And as you well know, all American presidents, if they declare war, have to go and get approval from Congress. And it just seems to me that it's not just the Democrats, but the Republicans in the Congress who seem to be unable to actually enforce any checks and balances on this man. It just seems astonishing. And I wonder whether you think that there is anything that anybody in America politically can actually do.
The American Constitution is certainly not as strong as everybody here thought that it was. And successive American presidents, it's not just Donald Trump who's ignored the requirement of the War Powers Act to go to Congress and consult before launching any kind of act of war. Now, the White House is saying here, and this was contained in talking points that were distributed to Republican lawmakers last night by the White House, that America is not at war. This is what they refer to as a major combat operation. And the clear direction was given to the president's fellow Republicans not to describe it as a war, which to many eyes and ears here has echoes of President Vladimir Putin in Russia, saying that he hasn't gone to war with Ukraine. He's simply engaged in a special military operation. But look, I mean, it is apparent that he should have consulted with Congress. But like many of his predecessors, he hasn't bothered, and Congress will stamp its feet and they'll say they're very unhappy about it, and then there is not much they can do about it. But more broadly, the checks and balances that are written down in black and white in the Constitution are being just eviscerated by this president. We've seen it on issue after issue. He doesn't treat the Congress or the courts like co-equal branches of government as the Constitution requires. And the most interesting thing to me, James, is that as we go into a midterm election here, I promise you, you won't hear a single American interviewer asking a single candidate for elected office in this country whether they think the American Constitution is still fit for purpose. At a time when it plainly is not, the discussion about whether it's time for a rewrite, time for a rethink, is not happening here. And that is the most staggering issue that I think this country confronts, that it's not even having that conversation.
Let's take this. Oh, sorry, it's just disappeared. So let's go to another call. Adrian is in Swindon. Hello, Adrian.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Yeah, take it with a pinch of salt, okay? I work in the industry where project management is the key. And, take it with a pinch of salt, please. But maybe Trump has a roadmap, and he's trying to deliver, but he's really agile in his approach. Let's think about the way he, worked with Ukraine and the Ukrainian president. He wanted to make deals with Putin. It didn't work out too well. His next step was to secure a peace in Gaza. Kind of worked out. It freed up capacity when this worked out with Israel. So then after consultations with Israel, he planned taking down the Iranian regime.
Well, that's not how Marco Rubio put it, is it?
I'm sure it didn't. But, do we trust Marco? Do we know that he's telling the truth? Do we know that he's actually, telling us what the plan was? Let me just finish this up and hear me out. So basically, when he freed up the capacity of the Israel, and after some consultation with those guys, he planned taking down Iran regime. But then the risk was that, there'll be oil shortages from the Middle East. So the next thing to do would be to secure the oil reserves.
So what's your question, Adrian?
Not so much a question, but just give me another 20 seconds. If he decided to the oil reserves and this would be a low-hanging fruit. We're taking out Maduro, job done. Now he's ready to take out Iranian regime and kill like two birds in one stone. So with the limited supply of drones to Russia, he can limit the capacity of Russians to hit Ukraine. Maybe, I'm just saying maybe, there is like a plan in Mr. Trump's head.
Well, there's a lot of ifs and buts and maybes there. Simon, do you buy any of that?
Well, look, I think that you can either argue that President Trump is engaged in an act of agility, and as many of his defenders claim, that he's playing four-dimensional chess, and behind the scenes he's got a plan and he knows exactly what he's doing, and we're all going to be surprised by the end result of this. Or you can argue that essentially what he's done is throw all the cards in the air, see where they land, and hope that in some fashion they land in a more propitious way than the hand that he was playing with last week, when only last Thursday he was still engaged in negotiations with the Iranians that the Omanis, who were shuttling between the US and Iranian sides, said were making substantial progress. The fact that he cannot clearly articulate what the day after looks like in Iran, who he wants to be running the country, how he's going to facilitate, without boots on the ground, the formation of a new Iranian government and avoid the prospect, which is real, of a civil war inside Iran as remnants of the regime and the Revolutionary Guard battle it out with people on the streets of the country, suggests to me that he's not actually playing a game of four-dimensional chess. But, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
And, Aggie, do you think that there are people behind the scenes in Downing Street and the Foreign Office who've now just effectively given up on Trump?
I don't think they've necessarily given up on Trump, but I'm not sure. There is obviously an element of worry about how Donald Trump is responding, but there is also lots of people within the Labour Party who actually think it's not bad for Keir Starmer, either domestically or actually from a sort of strength point of view with Donald Trump, that they do have this point of difference and that Donald Trump is criticising him. And as one Labour source said to me earlier, everyone hates Trump in this country, even more than they hate Keir Starmer. So they don't actually think this is that bad a row for him to be embroiled in.
And do you think that this state visit by the King and Queen will go ahead? I can't remember when it's due. Because, I wonder if there might be, should we say, a convenient illness?
There could be a convenient illness, but I would imagine that Donald Trump will do what he can to make sure that happens. He's not doing what he can to make sure that happens at the moment, is he? But we know what a fan he is of the King and of the royal family, so I'm sure he's very, very keen for it to go ahead.
OK, more questions in a moment. It's 9:49.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Donald Trump attacks Keir Starmer again today, saying our current Prime Minister's no Winston Churchill. What do you make of those comments? Plus, are there any circumstances in which Britain should join the war on Iran?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
You're really building that business, Josh. That's because you chose to bank with Virgin Money, earning cash back on your supplies, turning expenses into rewards on everything from Sanders to skip hire. He came, he soared, he conquered. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus. Terms and exclusions apply. Cashback rate of 0.25% backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name of Clydesdale Bank PLC.
The Hillary sale ends soon, so get window-wise and grab these amazing offers while you still can. Like up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, grab £50 off your electric blind order and conveniently control your blinds for less. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the Hillary sale ends on the 9th of March. Conditions apply.
Calling all young creatives. It's time to get prepped for the art and design industry. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Keo, an art and design student in Year 12.
As an art student, we get the chance to work on our own pieces, either in the studio or using the digital software. Some of my work has also been shown in galleries, and last week I got the chance to attend a design agency to learn more about my future career.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in Years 10 or 12. globalacademy.com.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
A Thameslink train is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep for a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:51. Annie says, Ian, I'm listening 10 minutes behind to catch Simon Marks, another fangirl. Please stop it, Annie. It only encourages him. Just wanted to highlight the fact that Trump said he would go ahead.
He's not going to hear that for the next 10 minutes.
I know. Well, think of the delight she will have in 10 minutes' time when we're off air. Just wanted to highlight the fact that Trump said he would go ahead and use Spanish military bases, whether the Spanish government gave permission or not. Did I hear that correctly? WTF? Did he say that?
Yeah, you did hear that correctly. He did say that. Yeah, he did. He said, we don't even have to ask. Yeah, absolutely.
So he could have done that with us as well. Because what no one seems to know is that there are no American fighters at RAF Fairford anyway at the moment, which is sort of complicates the matter even more. Right, another question from Gary in Glossop. Gary, what would you like to ask?
Evening, Ian. Evening, panel. Yes, I'd just like to ask Keir Starmer's behaviour sent the clearest message yet to Putin. Come on and invade Europe. We will not stop you, or we'll send a document giving you a firm warning.
Aggie.
I don't think so, because I think these wars are distinct, and I think that the UK and Europe have been pretty clear where they stand on Ukraine, have supported Ukraine all the way through. And I think that has been the clearest signal to Putin, really, that they could send. And I think they see this as a distinct conflict. The fact that they're not getting involved when the US is, I think, is because they would say that they're not sure there's a clear plan and they're not sure about the legality of it. And I think they've been very clear about the legality or lack thereof of the invasion of Ukraine.
It's not often that you and I disagree, but I fundamentally disagree with every single word you've just spoken there, because Putin, when we did nothing in Syria in 2014, funnily enough, he then went into Crimea. We never did anything when he went into Georgia in 2008. He looks at all of these things and looks for any sign of weakness. And if he thinks he could now get away with going into one of the Baltic states, and I think this sends that kind of signal, I think that Gary is onto something there. Should we let Simon arbitrate?
Please.
I mean, I'm veering slightly between the two of you. I mean, I think that if Putin decided to invade the Baltic states, we'd be in a completely different ball game, and the Prime Minister would be in a completely different ball game. The bigger question then would be, what's Donald Trump going to do? Is he actually going to go military to try and constrain Vladimir Putin? I think the bigger question under those circumstances is what Trump's response would be, rather than what the Prime Minister's would be.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with that. Right, so that's 1-1 then. That's our score at the moment.
I agree.
Jackie. Right, Gary, thank you very much for that. Let's take another text. Oh no, we've just done that one.
Another fangirling.
Let's do
Simon Marks text.
No, we can't possibly do any more of that. That way lies madness. Shashav says, Simon, can Trump actually cut trade with Spain? And about the Churchill remark, why would Trump want a Winston Churchill in number 10 if he's not starting World War III?
Well, I'm intrigued to find out more details about this Spanish trade instruction that he gave to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who was standing there alongside the President and the German Chancellor and other members of Donald Trump's inner circle when the President said to him, Scott, we're cutting all trade with Spain. The German Chancellor is clearly indicating, and I see no reason why he would not be correct, that all Spanish trade is covered under European Union arrangements. And so how you single out Rioja or olive oil or sardines, and I'm making a shopping list here because I was realising I need to
you don't want to stereotype at all
tonight. I can't quite decide what to do first. Should I go and fill the car first, or go and bag the remaining bottle of Rioja in the off licence? I think that he almost certainly cannot simply unilaterally block that stuff from coming in, because it all would be covered by EU arrangements. And I forget the other half of the question, Ian. What was the other half of Shafshaf's question?
I've deleted it now, so I can't remember. Let's move. Sorry, Shafshaf. Let's go to Vanessa in Croydon.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hello. Just a very quick question to all of you. Is there any underlying thought that this is just all about oil and an oil grab, and at the end of the day, the Iranians are basically going to get completely screwed over? Everyone thinks it's all going to be all democratic, all lovey-dovey, but it's just America with the Emiratis.
Okay. We're running out of time, Vanessa, so let's put that question to Simon. Is it all about oil?
Well, I don't think it's all about oil, because I think there are all sorts of other reasons why Donald Trump wanted this distraction from the various questions swirling around him, whether it's about Jeffrey Epstein, immigration and mass deportations here, a whole raft of different issues, the future of his tariffs policy. But I do think that Vanessa is correct in identifying where we may all land here, because given that there is no appetite among the American public for a conflict that is going to see significant loss of American life in the region, and given that Donald Trump has done nothing to explain to the American public why this conflict is in the national interest, the most likely outcome here is a Venezuela-style model, where he pulls his forces back soon, eventually, having decapitated the leadership in Iran, but agrees to work with the remnants of that leadership, effectively what he's done in Venezuela with Maduro's former deputy now running the country, and inveighs upon the Iranians the need to hand over control of the oil industry. And the Iranians were flirting with this in those talks in Geneva. They raised it as a possibility just a week ago.
Please add me to the fan club tally of Simon Marks. Can't see who that's from. So that's 3-0 at the moment. Oh, no, a late entry. I'm a fan of Aggie Chambray. I love her voice, says Tom in Southsea.
Yes.
So it's 3-1
Finally.
and Aggie's pulled Tom in Southsea. What a lovely way to end the programme. Thank you both very much indeed. We will no doubt do this again soon. And thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'm back tomorrow from 7. New episode of the Iain Dale All Talk podcast about to be released with Steve Rosenberg, the Russia editor of the BBC. It's absolutely fascinating. Do download that tomorrow. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Hansen, but right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you. Ben Kentish here with you on LBC. On the programme,
The UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have.
it is a war of words that turned into a serious problem. Keir Starmer sending a British warship to Cyprus in the Mediterranean as tensions with Donald Trump deepen. This after Iran struck British air bases. We'll talk about that later in